Chapter 659, The Greatest Dragonborn. Chapter 659, The Greatest Dragonborn. Winterhold, Neo Sarthal. Year 202 of the Fourth Era brought not only war and destruction, but also opportunities and wealth. Through Winterhold, merchants were now investing and using the resources of the land. However, the most valuable resource of Winterhold turned out to be its accused weather. The temperature in Winterhold was at an all-time low for most of the year, which makes it impossible to plant any crops. Still, with the Civil War going on, Winterhold stored astronomical amounts of food of various kinds by the fact that it is a natural fridge. Many storehouses were erected in the cave areas after clearing many trolls, bears, and wolves by the Firemane clan and using these caves as storage places. While the Dare Dragon Trading Company enforced a rough policy against food monopoly, they became the key holders of food import and export to many holds around them. This almost overshadowed the food shipments that Skyrim always imported from Cyrodiil. The worldwide partners of the DTC were spread throughout Skyrim, High Rock, and Hammerfell, which exchanged many food goods with industrial products and medicine. This complemented the fact that many refugees started a new fishery project, which John Dare didn't think of that much and made a huge success, the situation which encouraged the Dares to support them with equipment and funds. All of this happened while maintaining many policies regarding the refugees' control, the situation which started getting worse by late winter. With many families losing their winter provisions too early this year, this drove them to sea in Winterhold, which impacted the economy for a few weeks before absorbing the refugees into the industrial system. The positive thing with John's economy is that it always needs more workers with him jumping on every opportunity there is to find. The latest opportunity he thought of was constructing a stronghold in the middle of the sea. This can serve as a defense point and a trading post to the Isle of Roscria in the far northern sea and to the Dragon Isles east in the Patamaic Ocean. The Dragon Isles may one day open the road to the far eastern continent of Akavir. The work spirit of Winterhold was so great that it would melt the snow off Winterhold and turn it by the next spring into a great vibrant coastline. Back in Dare Tower, things were going quietly. The lowest floor was swarming with employees and scribes who were working as John's force behind his economy and busied themselves by drawing charts and maps for the spring caravan to High Rock. However, they all became quiet when a certain female walked in. Nerina Aron, an arch-wizard from the college and John Dare's adoptive mother, walked in with big steps and turned to the spiral stairway that went up to the next floor. There, a contraption started rotating on cogs as a platform descended from above with the exact same design as the dwarves' lifts. This one, however, was made of steel and wood. The platform started rising to the next section of the tower, and from there, Nerina walked into the luxurious hall, which felt like a throne room. This was the residential section that was occupied by John's family and friends. In its center of it all was a Magica focus point, which served as a magical lift that levitates people to the other floors since there were no stairs from this point onward. Unless one can use magic, aura, or has special permission by John, no one could go further than this. Of course, Nerina can just go in and out without anyone complaining. The Magica focus point took her from the first floor of the second section all the way up to the third section, which was the private area of the tower, and its top. There, all of John's toys were gathered. As she emerged through the levitating array, Nerina was in front of the door leading to the third section. She simply walked in, and there, she could see towers and towers of bookshelves and storage spaces. There were armor stands, weapon display cases, an entire dragon skeleton hung from the ceiling with chains of steel, and a section for all the trophies John collects. In the middle, Nerina could see a crown placed on display with many red gems dotted on its large wing-like sides. Not all the gems were there, of course, but 19 of them. There is also a note that there are 5 that are missing from the crown of Berenzia. Nerina stood in front of the crown and watched her reflection on its protective glass as it displayed her wearing the crown. She smiled for a second and walked to the book section looking for some reference books from her student's personal stash. John wasn't much of a reader, despite his magic knowledge. However, he would ask his system to scan the books and read them for him like an audiobook. That is why he had a big collection in all sorts of fields that may interest wizards. But as Nurina started searching through the maze of bookcases, she noticed a figure moving around the bookcases with the sound of books falling on the ground. Nurina arched herself backward and looked at the book as it started to shake and jump by itself off the ground back to where it was on the shelf. This was just a simple enchantment on all books here, but from the number of books that seemed to have been flying back to their shelves, it seemed that someone was acting carelessly again. "Hilda," Nurina called, "how many times do I have to tell you John doesn't keep the cooking books here?" No reply was heard, which made Nurina frown. She stepped away from the bookcase she was at and walked through the library until she reached its center where a large reading table was located. There, Nurina could see a figure's back dressed in all shades of black, resembling the structure of an average woman. "Who are you?" Nurina asked. No answer was heard as the figure kept tearing through a book page by page in a very hectic manner. Nurina approached it, and as she was 15 feet away, she noticed a mound of books lying on the table. Brief History of Empire, Pocket Guide to the Empire, The Great War, Guide to Western Skyrim, The Madness of Pelagius, Disaster at Ionith, Broken Diamonds, The Oblivion Crisis, and, that's interesting, The Wolf Queen and her biography. Nurina only needed to say those last words for the figure in front of her to tense up and turn in her direction. Nurina could notice that the figure was actually floating rather than using its feet for movement, and at that moment, everything was crystal clear. "Look at you," Nurina said. "Very interesting indeed. A demi-lich? I'm not sure. Not exactly a lich too. How unique." She could see that the figure was a woman indeed, and her face was covered in a black veil that could barely view a translucent image of what lies beneath. Blue flickering flames for eyes, ornate skull, a layer of astral energy forming a face of a woman whose age felt more ambiguous the more one thinks about it. Feeling the undeath mixed with John's creation, Nurina pieced all the facts together. Add to that the fact that this being was searching through the books of history regarding the last empire. Nurina became quite pleased with what she was seeing. "My son is now conjuring up some historical figures. He has come a long way indeed," Nurina said, walking around the figure of Envy to the opposite side of the table where she sat and placed her book. "Something amiss with those historical accounts?" she then asked. "Lies, all lies," Envy blurted out, which made Nurina curious as she picked the book she was just tossing aside. "The Broken Diamonds. A folk record from the moors of Glenumbra on the crimes of the usurper Emperor Uriel Septim III against the rightful Empress Kintara Septim II. The tragedy which started the War of the Red Diamond. I was born 300 years after these events. To be honest, it is ancient history to me who is 200 years old," Nurina said before tossing the book back and picking the Oblivion Crisis. That one, on the other hand, I lived and witnessed. Envy wasn't curious about anything other than the Septim dynasty. As the possessor of the ego of Wolf Queen Potima, she wasn't that much of a family person, and as far as history is concerned, she has killed more Septim family members than the mythic Dawn cult. "I assume you're vexed about what history does to the losing side," Nurina said quite naturally, as if trying to capture Envy's behavior. However, Envy was surprisingly calm. "I feel like asking a question," Envy said. "Were you the one that convinced him not to pursue the throne?" Nurina pondered over the sudden question. "No," Nurina said. "Even though I raised John for most of his life, he developed his own opinions earlier than his peers, and for a good reason. He refused the whole thing regarding political leadership and chose to be a tycoon. More freedom," he said. "If only I raised a child with such potential, what a waste," Envy said as she looked at Nurina with nothing but contempt. "He could have done things not even I." Envy couldn't complete her words because of what Nurina's eyes looked like. They were no longer Dunmare red, but pitch black, so black that the light around her eyes twisted and broke just from the power she displayed. The power of origin, chaos. The veins around Nurina's neck started pulsating as they turned black. She raised her hand, and a strong telekinetic force encased Envy. Her entire body crumbled save for the ornate skull covered in ebony as it was pulled in Nerina's hand. "So you are Envy?" Nerina said, "Indeed, such a trait fits you well." Envy was completely suppressed by Nerina, and someplace far away, John felt that energy of envy was being attacked. He didn't care that much as he expected something like this to happen when Envy requested to stay in the library. As for Nerina, she felt that her anger was wasted and threw the ornate skull away. As her chaos infection was suppressed, Nerina could speak freely once again. "The likes of you are vain and inefficient," Nerina said. "You say I wasted my child when I didn't poison his ears with wasteful dreams of an empire's throne? Please, that throne you're so passionate about has torn families apart and set up brothers to slay their brothers. Even Tiber Septim was a traitor who chose to slay his own king. Even Remand Cyrodiil was nothing but a mortal who built his legend on a house of lies. Even Alessia, the so-called saint, was nothing but a slave who rebelled with a power borrowed from the divine and the allies that came towards her blessings. I'm proud of the man I raised. His power was wielded by his own hands long before he was called Dragonborn. His house was built on the bones of his enemies, the trust of his family, the dreams of his past, and the hopes of his future. His loyalty was always to the land and the people, and despite his flaws, the empire and the dominion run from his way if he sets out on a certain path. Now, what can a man bound to a throne do? The boy I raised is now a man far greater than the house of Septim, the house Remand, and the house of Alessia combined. A dragonborn above all his peers, he who eats dragons. And you lecture me about raising an emperor?" Nerina walked to the skull of Potima as the latter's astral form emerged on the ground under Nerina's feet. "I raised a family man, and our family rules beyond borders and realms. I'm the start of this house, and we are the House of Dare. The bond that was forged by this house was greater than the empire built on the flickering dragon fires, and it encompassed a power that can be passed to the coming eras." Chapter 660, Side Adventure. Chapter 660, Side Adventure. One last adventure before we finish this volume. Guess where we are going? To Rift 10. John rode an 8-legged horse and passed the land. Teleporting through the land he could have used, but this would take from him the thrill of the journey. He was already near the rift and decided to go down the 7,000 steps of the snow tower. He stopped by each village and town, bathed in rivers, ate from hunting and gathering, fought off trolls and bears, and lay beside a Spriggan grove watching the wonderful nature and speaking with the spirits. The Spriggans of the rift never attacked him, for he was wearing the Amulet of Kine. He even passed by the shack of his old hunting mentor and offered a few gifts to the old man. Soon after, he found himself facing a young maiden in dark robes. The girl was crying and shaking as beneath her was a woman with a knife in her chest. An interesting encounter, John thought, but he still chose to see how it unfolds from coverage. "Don't worry," said a voice John didn't see its owner. "You don't need to feel down for her. We must press forward." The voice was Khajiit feminine and awfully familiar to John, who was about to activate his detection magic and inspect the identity of the speaker. However, the speaker walked into his view, and he could see them wearing the armor of the Dare Corps. Was it a trooper on a job or something? The trooper knelt beside the young maiden and removed her helmet. There, John could see the spotless and perfectly white fur of a Khajiit. "Akra." John narrowed his eyes. Akra was an old friend of John and the rest who were raised with him in the orphanage under Nerina's care. John was quite fond of the Khajiit girl back then. "Stand up." Akra gave a hand to the girl who clung to her while shaking, and the two headed towards the mountain. John followed closely behind them, and he quickly inspected the dead body they left behind. The stab was sloppy, but it seemed that it came out from where the victim least expected, judging by the fact that the struggle seemed very minimal. "What have you gotten yourself involved in, Akra?" John narrowed his eyes. "Akra has a tail for trouble," as the Khajiit liked to say. John has once caught her red-handed managing a drug operation with Isolde, which always reminded him that the two girls are very comfortable acting in the gray moral zone. While he dragged them back to Winterhold and forced them into a military drill as punishment, I sold a server time before deciding to work for him as a trader, while Akira decided to stay as a mercenary. Back to the present, John didn't feel like sticking his nose in other people's business, but the moment a trail of bodies start appearing, he wouldn't be able to ignore it until it proves that it is worth ignoring. He kept his magic on high alert and snuck towards the mountain, where he found an old structure known as the Darklight Tower. I remember this place, John pondered. Back in the day, I practiced magic nearby, and some witches tried to capture me. If I am not mistaken, Nurina stunned them on the ground and took them away for a friendly word. She massacred them. But from the corpse found in the trail where Akira and the young woman took, it seemed that the witches were back. Darklight Tower? Witches? So does that quest. John remembered something from the back of his mind. While I pride myself on having thousands of hours under my belt in Skyrim, I have discovered this quest very recently and played it only twice. It is called Repentance. When players visit this area in the game, they run into a young witch called Ilia, who tells that her mother is a witch who is about to perform a horrible ritual, and Ilia was tasked with finding her a human sacrifice. The young witch rebels against her mother and tries to stop the ritual with the help of the player, meaning that she had to put her mother down. A fucked up situation indeed. John walked into the tower and saw that some bodies had been dropped as the fight started. Frost spells and arrows were all over the place as the fight seemed to have advanced up the tower. John conjured himself some undead and walked up the tower while whistling. It took him a minute where he could finally hear the sound of fighting. There were two Hagravens blocking the road ahead, and the two girls were having a tough time against them. The hags teleported around and used fireball spells to force Akira around the place, while the witch Ilia was barely defending with her wards. Skells, fire! John gave the undead an order, and they rushed at the entrance of the room and lined up. With their bows, a volley of arrows struck the first Hagraven. There was no escaping the surprise attack, since the undead were too many. The first Hagraven died with arrows sticking out from every inch of its body. The second Hagraven was taken by the appearance of the skeletons, which opened the chance for Akira to strike the Hagraven's arm and cut it off. Nice, John said. Now go for the head. Akira maneuvered her way out of the Hagraven's attack range, and when she was in a blind spot, all it took was one clean cut. The head flew away, and the Hagraven's body started to move based on lingering neural signals before completely falling to the ground. Nice footwork, John commented as he was standing at the door of the chamber between his undead. Who are you? The young witch aimed her spells at him, but seeing that Akira wasn't hostile, she kept looking between the two. John, Akira narrowed her eyes. You followed this one here? I was just playing around in my old spot. John said, once I saw you, I thought about coming to say hello. You too. The young witch was about to ask, but she wasn't sure which words to use. Rivals. Friends. Akira and John replied at the same time, which made it seem awkward how they answered. I guess you don't need a hand then, John said. Just stay, Akira said awkwardly. This one was just surprised to see you, but your help is welcome. All right, John said and turned to the young witch. Name is John, a wandering wizard and an avid hunter. Ilia, the young witch said, I am from around here. I see. Witchcraft practice. I don't really discriminate. John said, being open-minded. There is a witch up in this tower, John. We need to defeat her. Akira said, this one has agreed to help young Ilia. What's in it for me? John asked. Anything in this tower you want is yours. Ilia said. Yikes. John looked around the dirty witch coven and felt shivers. I'll do it for the good of the realm then. Akira knew you were chivalrous. Akira said and pointed towards the door. Shall we? We shall. And the witch lied dead by the spell of her daughter. It wasn't pleasing how things turned out to be. A mother sends her daughter to find a human sacrifice. The mother intends to use it to become a Hagraven. The mother is killed by the rebelling daughter and the involved mercenaries. Ilia was left to mourn and bury her mother, and she promised to find proper payment for John and Akira. John dismissed it and told her that if she wants to employ her talents for good, she better go to the College of Winterhold and give her a recommendation letter. Always doing good deeds, aren't you? Akira commented as they watched Ilya take a carriage from Riften to Winterhold. If my good deeds can erase my bad ones, won't I pass on as a happy man? John said. But Akira thought you were some sort of immortal now. She said. All men must die. John said. I just want my life to be remembered in the hearts of those whom I serve. All right, you slick. Akira snorted, knowing how deep John could be sometimes. This one will be taking her leave as well. Where to? John asked, but Akira seemed hesitant to reply. Settling old scores. She said. John remembered. Long ago, Akira was orphaned due to a bandit attack. John knew of this and offered her help many times, but she wasn't willing to accept it. She wanted her revenge to be exacted by her own hands. I know you don't want my help, but here. John handed out a staff to Akira. It was something that he looted from the Darklight Tower. A staff that appeared in the game called the Staff of Hag's Wrath. You still good with the magic you learned? John asked. Not really, Akira replied. This will help. John put it in her hands. If you need assistance, come to find me. I'll be staying in Riften for a couple of days. Thank you. Akira nodded with a smile. She knew that he would offer to help as much as he can, but she really needed to do this on her own. John watched Akira head off into the woods and couldn't help but feel a bit worried. He would have to check on her after his business here is done. Speaking of which, John started hearing rumors in Riften about Maven Blackbriar falling to illness. After what Envy did to her, it is a surprise that she still survived. But this is as far as she is allowed to go. John headed into Riften with the intent to kill. Chapter 661. A Meeting with the Thieves Guild. Chapter 661. A Meeting with the Thieves Guild. It was close to madness how power started to shift in a mere few days. With the absence of Maven Blackbriar, the Dare agents started to crawl outside the city and start conducting business with many farms, mines, and small businesses. It was a war that couldn't be seen from the outside, since its weapons were made of money and its soldiers were the simple agents of the two sides. Inside the best inn in the city, talks about the current situation between the Blackbriars and the Dares were at full heat. Many of Maven's loyalists insisted that they wouldn't allow the people of John Dare in, and many of Maven's victims just had enough with them. John could spot a few of his agents in the city, some who work in different departments, and some who were complete mysteries to the others. One of the latter types is a certain vampire who was waiting for him. You're late, she said as she saw him. Sorry, my dear. I had to set things straight in my house. Being a family man is a load of work. John said. Whatever, Serana replied and got her head closer. I got news about the target. Entertain me. John replied. She is not in Riften, but she can't be too far. Serana said. Her daughter is the only one remaining in the city, and her eldest son has disappeared with her. Knowing his habits, I know that he contacted the Thieves Guild recently to acquire his fix. It must be stressful for him. John laughed. What about Maven herself? Well, there is no glory in killing her, that I can tell you. Serana replied. She is as dead as an empty husk, barely holding on to dear life by a thread. And the Archwizard on their side? Messner was his name. John asked. Man is a mystery. I have no idea where he is. Maybe he has taken Maven somewhere, I don't know. Serana said. This was all for my search. You did well. John said. Let's go meet some friends and then decide on what to do. Where to? Serana asked. The Ratway. In the underground level of Riften, John and Serana walked the Ratway. It is her second time being here, so she realized that John was meeting with the Thieves Guild. Upon entering the ragged flagon in that acts as the front door of the guild, John and Serana started tiptoeing and walked in very quietly. Some voices started coming from the flagon as some of the thieves gathered around a table. I say, an elephant, a donkey, and an ant are all locked in a room. How do they get out? Delvin Mallory asked in a merry voice. The elephant rams the door down. Brynjolf replied and hit the table, clearly not sober at all. You're too drunk. Dirge shook his head. The ant crawls under the door and opens it from outside. Dirge. But Dirge's head was suddenly rammed against the table. That's what the donkey said, John said while holding Dirge's head down. Looking at him, many started to laugh, and half of them were just drunk, not sure whether it was about the joke or the sound that Dirge's head made. All right, everyone, back to your business, rich guy alert. Delvin said the moment he saw John's face. You're being as heartless as a son of a bitch, Delvin, John said as he pushed Dirge off his chair and sat down. John. Brynjolf hit John's shoulder as he seemed really upset. What got him so hammered anyway? John asked as he shooed away Brynjolf. Things are getting worse in Rift Inn, Delvin said. Do you believe it? The guards caught Brynjolf, and he spent 2 nights in jail. You can't be serious. It's crazy around here these days, young John. Bad luck is everywhere, even in liquor, Delvin said. And speaking of liquor and bad luck, our favorite liquor merchant. You don't happen to know anything about that? Why are you saying that? John frowned before showing a cheeky smile. The winery of Winterhold is working non-stop for its loyal customers, such as yourself. Quit beating around the bush, or a gray fox will jump out and bite you. Delvin spoke while raising his index at John's face. You know damn well I'm talking about Maven. You were using that friend of yours from the Brotherhood to track her down. Delvin pointed to Serena, who was hiding in the nearby shadows. I told you there's no use trying to sneak around Delvin, John said, addressing Serena, who was hiding in a distance. But I didn't think you would remember her face, Delvin. What has gotten into you, boy? You forgot how we operate already? Delvin raised his eyebrows in mockery. We remember most of our clients accurately, especially those of friendly organizations such as the Dark Brotherhood. Serena walked ahead and stood beside John. She then took a look at Brynjolf and looked at him right in the eyes. Why don't you take a nap in a warm bed until you sober up? As she said those words, her charm powers as a vampire made an effect on the weak-minded Brynjolf, and he started to walk off his chair to the sleeping quarters in the back. She then took his seat. Azura's titties. A she-vampire? Delvin said as he recognized the effect. You're brave coming here right under the noses of the Dawn Guard. Vampires can't even run in the rat way from them, you know. Don't worry about her. She works for me, John said. You hired the Brotherhood after they tried to kill you once? Delvin became all surprised. The John I know would have murdered the living shit out of them. You become a real rich boy now, hiring assassins like old Maven. Well, my style right now is that instead of hunting all the wolves, why not lead them? John said. And you think Astrid will let you run her happy little family? Delvin asked. She's 6 feet beneath the face of Nirn, John replied. I have to say, her grave view is quite remarkable. North to Falkreath, right beside the lake, with her husband by her side. By day gone. Delvin was taken aback by hearing the news. I hear that the view on the lake out of Rift Inn is perfect this time of the year. I can arrange for you a good resting place now that I am in the Undertaker business. John said, Do you want it up road or a little at the back? Delvin smiled as he backed off from John's intimidation. I'd love to have one right by the lake's beach since I get sweaty when I sleep. Delvin said, But let's arrange that in 30 years or so. Deal. And if I am not around, our vampire friend here will come to kill you in 30 years and bury you by the lake if you survive till then. John said, 30 years. I can wait. Serena seemed okay with it. All right, Johnny boy. Maybe I can live up to 100 or something. My great-grandma lived till 120. Expected for a Breton. John nodded. Anyway, how can I serve our esteemed guests? Delvin said, and behind his teeth, he was cursing at John. I was a fool to save you 20 years ago. Goodness, he can't take a joke, can he? John said, You know who I want, Delvin. Where is Maven? Out of town, Delvin said. No shit. John looked at Delvin without a hint of being amused. You know she no longer has value to you. If it wasn't for her, The guards wouldn't arrest Brynjolf like that. Seems like someone at the top knows that Maven is no longer in power. So you're really getting rid of her? Delvin seemed vexed. If you do so, can you take responsibility for what is going to happen? Responsibility? Serana found the word strange. It is her turn to die. That's that. But the order of the city will collapse. Delvin said, we're barely keeping things together, but once the Blackbriars are gone, who's going to back us up? We might as well move from Rift Inn to Winterhold like the rest of them. I could do a thing or two, but my influence in Rift Inn isn't that strong yet. John said, I can take care of all of you, so long I see loyalty in return. John's last sentence was said loud enough for the entire troop of thieves to hear. Loyalty? From behind the counter of the Ragged Flagon, Veckel the bartender asked, you were raised up there in the streets and down here in the Ratway, and you won't show us some. Don't say trust, or I'll throw dirge towards you. John warned him. I wasn't going to. Veckel shrugged his shoulders. I was saying, do you think you can show us some favor since you're a member of our merry little band? Veckel said in a sly tune and looked around, right? Of course. Tanilia said as she stood beside Veckel. Yes, sure. Vex also said she showed herself from behind the wall of crates. I'm inclined Brynjolf would agree as well. Veckel added, so why not show your older sibling some love? Yo, Delvin, this is so fucking heartwarming. John laughed. You become a beggar's guild now. I told you he has no ounce of love in his cruel, miserable heart. Vex snorted. So fucking unbelievable. Delvin said, I've raised an ungrateful son of a bitch. You raised him? Serana repeated after him before looking at John. He is your family member? Vampires no longer see in the dark? Or something? John asked. See his ugly face? How can that be anywhere a relative of mine? See that ugly girl. John pointed at Sapphire, another thief in the gang. She is probably his relative. Sapphire raised her middle finger in response. Delvin, however, shuddered from what John said, since he was actually right. Sapphire is his niece, and he hasn't told her yet. All right. Delvin stopped the banter and insults from sullying his mood. Some of our kids are held in the prison, John. You get them out of there, and I'll figure a way to keep the guild running. Also, for payment, I'll give you everything we have on Maven. And when I say everything, I mean that I am handing you Maven's balls right to the palm of your hand. Gross. John made an irked face. I'll go talk to the Jarl then, make a big donation to the keep, and get some people drunk. See, Delvin spoke out in glee. I told you that damn Catatosker still got it. Meanwhile, I want to be back in the guild. John then dropped another bomb. The entire Ragged Flagon went silent from that statement. You gave your position to Julliner, remember? Delvin said, and that was to keep good relations with us. So you're saying you want to be doing jobs for us again, the mighty John Dare? Even Veckel was finding it a very unnecessary joke. No, I'm not doing jobs for the lot of you. I'll be giving jobs. John said and made a demand. I want a seat at the high table, the inner circle. I want the black guild outfit, not the brown. In the game, the Thieves Guild higher-ups always wore black leather rather than brown leather, which was given to the lower ranks. This color is only worn by Delvin, Vex, Brynjolf, and Mercer Fry the Guildmaster. You're not joking, are you? Vex asked. You do realize you were absent for at least 6 years. And you do realize that this doesn't change a thing. John replied, I continued acting as Catatosker and stealing shit for a good amount of time, even after I left. Furthermore, I fenced all your stolen goods when you came to Rift Inn for exquisite prices. I stole treasures around Tamriel from the Worm Cult and the Almarai Dominion to the point where they cried blood for tears. Ask about the things I did in Elsewhere and Somerset guilds, and you'll know. Hearing John, the thieves couldn't argue as his escapades and adventures have reached them through many sources. I've been a member of the guild for over 11 years since I was running for you at the age of 10. You all know where I belong and what I deserve, and I know something you will be very interested in. John said, and summoned a chest overflowing with gold septims in his hand. Mother, Mara. Tanilia couldn't breathe properly in front of the gold. I wouldn't get back in business without preparing a gift, right? You guys taught me better, right? True. You've been taught well. Almost the entire ragged flagon was standing around John now. Then, what are you waiting for? John said, why don't we take this to the vault and store it in there? You wouldn't want any coin going missing, right? Of course not. Surely. Right away. Somebody wake Brynjolf up. I'll go get him. The Thieves' Guild may have accepted John and took the money he's giving them, but a grin appeared on his face that only Sir Anna noticed. The thieves were in for the shock of their lifetime. Chapter 662. Who Dares? Chapter 662. Who Dares? John made a very big fuss inside the guild, and it started to echo through its walls. A former member offered a tribute of 10,000 gold coins. The members of the guild knew it was nothing too big for him, but he claimed that these gold coins aren't your normal, everyday septims. These were mostly Mormor coins, Mormor, sea elves from the far continent of Pyandonia, a place that is currently unreachable, and anything from it is considered a rare commodity. If this treasure is indeed from these lands, then its exchange rate and value will soar to the sky, once proven to be collector items. In truth, this treasure is something that John acquired through the coffer of King Orgnum, an artifact that he stole from the worm cult in Hammerfell. The coffer itself is a tool that can, as claimed, generate infinite gold coins. With the whole thing being unreal, John discovered that this coffer collects coins from all parts of the oceans and summons them in its storage. Thanks to that, John had a very large surplus of foreign and rare currencies, most of which were Maormori. In normal cases, no one would acquire such a large amount unless it was stolen from Pyandonia. If it was stolen, the guild would accept it. It is not like they won't accept a handout, but making them fall into this misunderstanding is probably for the best. Should we wait for Mercer to deposit this in the vault together? Brynjolf asked while rubbing his eyes as he was being forced out of his drunkenness and hangover by John's magic. When did you guys become Mercer's bitches? John asked. I thought you were your own dogs. Being told like that, none of Delvin's faction felt like trying to argue with John, but rules are rules. Delvin said, the guild master is the only one that can open the vault for us with his key in mind. I see. John made a face that doesn't seem to care. I am sure the rumor about the vault having 2 keys that are carried by the 2 senior thieves is true after all. Not that it is a third secret key held by someone like Brynjolf or anything. His words were quiet enough for only those around him to hear them. They all looked at him, and he smirked. Of course what he said is true. It is a well-kept secret, but Brynjolf is the keeper of the 3rd vault key. The vault of the Thieves' Guild is secured by a mechanism that requires 2 keys, so just in case one of the 2 went missing, they would still be able to access the vault with the 3rd. You knew? Delvin asked John, then looked at Brynjolf. I didn't tell. Brynjolf shook his head in terror. John smirked. I've known a long time ago. The fact that Gallus Desidenius ordered the 3rd key to be passed to Brynjolf before he disappeared. Gallus Desidenius. Now that name struck the old thieves badly. Why? Gallus Desidenius was the former guild master, a man that was considered a legend in Skyrim's guild. He was loved by all, and after his death, the guild suspected his killer to be his lover, a Dunmare woman known as Carlia. After Carlia escaped, one key was with Delvin, and the other was the guildmaster by default. The 3rd key was passed between some members secretly, but it was mostly kept by Brynjolf. We don't open the vault without the guild master's permission. Delvin stood up and approached John, saying those words in complete strictness. No matter who says it or whatever reason comes up, we don't break this only rule. Whoa! John raised his hands up against Delvin's attitude with the rules and smiled. There's no need to look at me this way. I was only insinuating the thought. John's smile didn't just grow wider, but the look in his eyes gave Delvin the creeps. Speak, boy. Delvin slammed his hand against the table. What are you insinuating? I really gave you this chest of rare coins just because you need it more than me. John said, once you deposit it into the vault, you will realize something very important, Delvin. And that is, Delvin didn't want to admit it, but something at the back of his mind was completely provoked by John. What you will realize is, John said lazily before suddenly holding Delvin closer by his shoulder and whispering some words to his ear. Paleness and shock. That was what was seen on Delvin's face. For a while there, his head felt so light that he would pass out and heavy that he would have his thoughts crawling against each other in his brain. With me, all of you. Delvin woke from his daze and immediately rushed deeper into the ragged flagon. The top brass of the guild looked between John and Delvin in shock before finally deciding to follow Delvin. They didn't even bother to carry the chest of Normandy gold that John gifted them. I guess we have to follow them then. John turned to Serana and spoke. That thing that you told him, Serana said, indicating that even her superb vampire senses caught on a few words from what John whispered to Delvin. I said that wouldn't it be impressive to open a two-keyed lock with just one key? John said with a wide grin. From what I hear, it is not that popular of a trick. Serana said. Delvin is as smart as a fox. He figured out what I meant. John said, and carried the chest inside with him. The interior of the Thieves' Guild was surely something secretive, but as Serana was John's follower, the group didn't care about what was going on, especially with the situation erupting from inside the guild. The guild hall was located in a circular drainage tunnel that turned into the main chamber of operations. There were a few doors leading to other rooms, but only one was small and made of refined moonstone that is known to be very durable against magic. Delvin, you got mad? A thief shouted. The guild master isn't here, and you think you can simply open the vault. Back off, Viper. There's one thing that we need to confirm, and if it is true and you keep pestering me, be ready to bear the consequences. Delvin replied in a threatening voice. I swear if anything goes out of the vault that isn't supposed to go out, I'll make Mercer flay the lot of you alive. Viper said, but the moment he spotted John walking behind Delvin, he realized that something much worse than a simple rebellion was going on. Deal, Delvin said and walked past Viper, hitting his shoulder against his. Viper was one of Mercer's boys. With the distrust running deep into the guild, Mercer seemed to have managed to surround himself with the scum of the earth just to make a front for his own against the old members, mostly former bandits and thugs. As Delvin reached the vault, he took out his key and stood against the right side of the door, while Brynjolf took the left. With their keys, they opened the vault. John smiled as he knew exactly what would happen. It's empty. These words, they made all the thieves in the den turn pale. The vault of the Thieves' Guild was a very secured room that was only opened a few times a year. Not all the members can just barge in, but those who can are the ones that have the real authority in this guild. But now that it was emptied, with barely nothing but wooden chests left inside, the realization that hit everyone was suspecting the current absent guild master. Where is he? Delvin shouted. His anger, his pain was all visible. Where is Mercer? Delvin walked out to the thieves that used to run for Mercer Fry and held Viper by the collar of his shirt. Viper was a boss mare, which makes him small-bodied by default. But even with Delvin being small-bodied Breton, the murderous intent in his eyes was something else. I don't know, cried Viper. He left at dawn. He didn't say anything we don't ask. Delvin threw Viper away and moved back and forth inside the vault, fuming with rage. Mercer, 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 Mercer. The day I will put my hands on him is finally here. But our gold, our work, our money. Delvin was angry beyond sense, and so were all the thieves. Every thief had a cut from a vault, insurance of some sort to support them when they decide to leave or retire. That was calculated from their merits in the guild and other success factors. This meant that not only they are broke, but they are broke, betrayed, and cursed. This may as well be the last day for them as a thieves' guild. John saw that, and the calmness on his face was barely hidden by a facade of sympathy. For now, you will have this for funding, John said, and placed the gold chest inside the vault by walking in himself. He even made sure to reveal it, so that the thieves know that they have something now. You, Delvin turned to John with anger in his eyes. You take us for fools. Actually, I do, John said. Don't think for a sec. Delvin wanted to continue but halted for a second. You do. Yes, your entire business operation can be dramatically overhauled. Instead of the petty thievery you're so busy with, you should have evolved into some real organized crime syndicate. Well, that is off the point, so let us keep on finding Mercer. Ow! Brynjolf spoke. How did you know the vault was emptied? I had Jelliner stationed here for a while. I wanted her to watch Maven's interests and movements in Rift End, and she noticed that Mercer was acting suspicious lately. She then told me that he has a certain artifact with him, so I researched until I figured it out. John said, What artifact, boy? Delvin said, And where is that fucker Mercer? As for Mercer, Jelliner and I decided to lead him to a trap near Winterhold. Once he is captured, he'll be brought here. As for the artifact, hell, but that time, a voice rang inside the guild, and to everyone's dismay, 2 Dunmare ladies were at the leading in the guild hall. John expected them, but not like this. The first Dunmare woman was Carlia, the suspect behind the murder of the previous guild master of the Thieves' Guild. John has met her before in Mournhold, since she also was in service of the Old Woman of Mournhold. In fact, Carlia is the granddaughter of the Old Woman, Berenzia. As for the second Dunmare, she was Jelliner. The 2 ladies looked roughed up pretty badly, but Jelliner. She was injured. Her hair was a mess, her expressions in great pain, multiple arrow wounds on her left arm and shoulder, and burn marks on her arm and back. Rumble. The storm hit inside the den of thieves, nearly everyone aside from Carlia, and Jelliner was blasted away from John. The magicka thickened to the point where some started to suffocate and even see hallucinations. It was just a single breath from him, and the situation was like that. There were those who fell down, and those who hit the walls as they literally flew off. Serana barely managed to dig her claws in the ground and brace herself while Delvin and Brynjolf were hiding under a table. John was staring at Carlia with eyes that can kill the bravest of men, and his words were murderous and insane. Who dares? Chapter 663, M for Evil. Chapter 663, M for Evil. Mercer Fry was contacted by Maven Blackbriar one night, and she summoned him to her estate outside of Rift End. But once he arrived, there was no Maven meeting him. It was a Dunmare wizard with a bald head along with a prosthetic arm, and I, Messenger. Rumors had it that Maven employed that wizard a couple of months ago, and he seemed to be behind the chaos around Rift End since he came for a certain artifact that he turned the entire hold upside down for. Still, once Mercer asked about Maven, he was shown to a withered old lady whose body is beyond the limits of its natural life. She woke up, spoke a few words, and the look on her eyes was filled with hate and malice, all before she collapsed again. These eyes were Maven's, all right. Mercer understood that something terrible had happened, and now his patron Maven is at open war with John Dare, a war she is losing. The Thieves' Guild seemed to have slipped from Maven's hand now that Mercer can't affect the big picture with Delvin breathing down at his neck. That's why he decided to use a branch of men he hired to empty the vault of the Thieves' Guild that he was leeching on for years. Getting to that vault was not a problem since the guild had a big heist plan for one night and all members were participating. All Mercer needed to do was to use the secret entrance from the graveyard to access the guild vault directly and open it using the artifact he managed to reacquire as of late. The skeleton key. Now that he emptied the treasury, the Thieves' Guild should be crippled and John Dare shouldn't have much use of it. Next on the list is to hurt John Dare indirectly. Earlier, Mercer assigned Jelliner with an investigation that he thought would yield nothing. It was about a certain sabotaging operation that was targeting the Blackbriars and the Thieves' Guild at the same time. At first, John Dare was the prime suspect in Mercer's mind, but knowing how much money John was pouring into the guild, things didn't add up. However, after some investigation, Jelliner returned with a name, Carlia. Mercer Fry, Hlalu Carlia, and Gallus Desidenius were the legendary trio of thieves from around 20 to 30 years ago. They led the Thieves' Guild through its best times and increased its popularity by leaps and bounds. Not only that, But those three were the Nightingales, a secret order within the Thieves' Guild that serves the Lady of Luck and Shadows, Nocturnal. With the Twilight Sepulchre being the sacred temple of Nocturnal on Nirn, the Nightingales were its sworn protectors, and from it, Nocturnal blessed the thieves with luck and fortune. In the Sepulchre, there lies an item called the Ebon Mirror. While it is simply a portal to Nocturnal's realm, it is also some sort of a conduit that can pass the influence of Nocturnal into Mundus. This influence is what gives luck to the thieves at night and shrouds them with mystery and shadow. To keep this portal open, the skeleton key must remain inserted within it and remain there, or else the portal shall be closed and the thieves of Tamriel shall be left without luck. This was the secret behind the curse that haunted the Thieves' Guild for long years. Mercer has been stealing from the guild for years. He lived a lavish lifestyle and kept his actions without ever stopping. Gallus Desidenius found out and tried so hard to expose him, but Mercer was craftier and forced Gallus into a trap near Winterhold where he slew Gallus by Carlia's blade. Once he reached Rift Inn, he used her arrows to injure himself and pinned it all on her. Carlia escaped Rift Inn and went back to the collapsed House Lalu in Mournhold, where she spent years planning her revenge. The moment she amassed enough fortune, she started going against Mercer from the shadows in order to bankrupt the guild and make them all turn against him. There, she will be able to expose him as a betrayer to Nocturnal and the entire guild. But Mercer caught on to that and realized who was the actual saboteur of his ongoing operations, and if it wasn't his old friend Carlia, not John Dare. He was even able to find that out thanks to John Dare's girlfriend, who was hanging around with the other thieves from Delvin's circle. Still, once he wanted to seek help from Maven Blackbriar to eliminate Carlia. He found her in the sorry state she was in thanks to John Dare and realized that John's involvement in the current affairs of the guild is not as minor as he was led to believe. According to Maven, he had to work with Archwizard Messner to eliminate John Dare as well. Maven had power over him, and quite frankly, she had him by the balls for a long time. She knew about his whole situation with Gallus and Carlia, and convinced him that she could offer him protection if he was at her service in the underground world. Still, Mercer was reluctant to go against John Dare. Despite John being a junior to him and previously a member of the guild, he is now a giant and with a lot of power backing him up. Mercer researched John for the past 2 years before the appearance of the dragons and tried to come up with a single-man heist in the Dare Tower, but that was an impossible plan without the skeleton key. At some point, Mercer actually lost the skeleton key for at least 3 years, and recently did he recover it. According to what was told to him, Edric and Daedric artifacts have wills of their own and sometimes can choose to appear and disappear. Mercer really panicked when the skeleton key disappeared, but a year ago, it emerged from the shadows right in front of his eyes. He knew it. The key calls to him. It wants to be with him. They have a connection. Nocturnal is the Lady of Shadows, and 2 of her artifacts are simply the most incredible tools any thief can have. One is the skeleton key, which can unlock anything in the physical and mental aspects, and the second is the gray cowl of Nocturnal, a mask which its wearer could be forgotten from the memories of all those who know them. If he was after anything now, it is the cowl that would make him disappear without anyone knowing who he ever was. But the cowl is currently lost, and if he wanted safe passage away from John Dare's influence, he would need to rely on Maven, or better, rely on the Archwizard by her side, Messner. Messner and Mercer met on a few occasions, and they managed to strike a good deal together to solve each other's problems. Messner seemed interested in and terrified by John Dare, and for some reason, he refused to speak about that thing that terrifies him, but at the same time, he wanted to get rid of him almost as much as Maven, and thus the 2 of them got to work together. First, Messner asked Mercer to lead a small band of thugs and capture a living vampire. A dangerous task, but with the vampire situation happening around Rift Inn, Mercer managed to ambush a Dawnguard caravan that was transporting a captured vampire from a fortified carriage and brought him to Messner. As for the next step of their plan, It was to capture or kill two figures that would lead John Dare to fly in rage and go to a place where they will lay a trap for him. Those two figures they are afterward Jellinar and Carlia. Jellinar is known to be one of John Dare's women and a very close person to him. The reason why she could hang around anywhere around Rift Inn is that she is something of a monster herself. All the Dares are monsters by normal people's standards, and that's why it had to be done where they least expect. That's why Mercer led Jellinar to the Snow Veil Sanctum, where Carlia was hiding in order to assassinate the two. John knew Mercer would try to assassinate Jellinar and warned her of the possibility. He also gave her enough items to kill Mercer and blow him to dust along with Carlia, whom she met once before in Morrowind. When John was returning to Skyrim, Jellinar traveled to the Morrowind to aid the Old Woman of Mournhold as a Dare mercenary. What John didn't expect was the involvement of Archwizard Messner and Maven in this affair with Mercer. It was as if all the scum whose names start with the letter M decided to work against him all at once. Messner and the Maven's mercenaries attacked Jellinar in the Snow Veil Sanctum and tried to capture her. Even with all the preparation she had on her, Jellinar was cornered badly and couldn't defend against an Archwizard for too long. The attacks all came from behind as Messner, Mercer, and Maven's mercenaries were following her with all sorts of tactics. She managed to easily drop a score of them, but whenever she kills one, two would come at her. There, she ran into Carlia, who found out that the back exit of the Snow Veil Sanctum was also surrounded by mercenaries. With the evil M-Gang closing on them from all directions, and Messner almost about to lay his hand on them, Jellinar dejectedly used her last card that she never imagined she would need. An escape scroll. She could take Carlia with her before the two got captured, and the moment they emerged, they were in Honeyside Manor in Rift Inn. With her terrible injuries, Jellinar refused to go anywhere other than the Thieves' Guild. She needed to tell John. Chapter 664. Hard Answers. Chapter 664. Hard Answers. John nursed Jellinar back to health by using a mixture of healing magic, energy circulation, and health potions. She soon was staring at the ceiling of the guild hall with a depressed look on her face. For the first time, I failed you, John, she said. No, you didn't, Carlia replied. It was too overwhelming for you alone to handle, and you escaped flawlessly. Jellinar didn't listen to Carlia and turned to John. The look between them conveyed a level of understanding. John was clearly angered by what she has gone through and decided to handle the situation by himself in his own way. As for her, you have done more than well, John said and approached her ears before whispering something. Really? She widened her eyes. I promised you once, he said. Don't worry. Not sure what he told her. The others watched Jellinar roll to his side and snuggle down with a smile. All right, I'll wait for you, she said in a sweet and calm smile that didn't lose any of her psycho personality. With that, Leon's stormy attitude calmed down for the most part, and most of the frightened thieves were introduced to a whole new John, one that they only heard about in the stories, but they thought he was still the same boy that grew up among them. So, can we finally get down to business? Delvin asked. John looked at him, and the two were on some baseline understanding that this situation will now take their full attention. All right, Delvin said. The guild's money was now solved by a contribution from one of us. He even left us his cut until this shit storm passes through. This is 10,000 Mormory gold coins, which can fetch up to 10 times their worth. Tanilia and Vekel will handle the situation about the liquidation of those coins, and we will fill the vault with what you can estimate as 100,000 gold septims. In other words, we are functioning just fine. The thieves were hardly trusting the situation they were in, but for now, they're stable and aware that John Dare and Delvin Mallory are on their side. But then, there was a whole new problem here. You better have a damn good reason to be here, murderer. It was then when Brynjolf stood up against Carlia. The situation was intense, as Carlia was known to be the murderer of the previous guild master, Gallus Desiderius. Not anyone here, except those who were here for a long time, knew about Carlia and the situation of her betrayal, but those who lived those days still remember. Please, lower your weapons so we can speak. I have proof that you've all been misled. Carlia replied in a tired and quiet tone. She seemed not threatened by anyone here other than John, who snapped just a minute ago. Just hear her out. But to her good luck, John sided with her in front of the guild members. This gave them a sense of acknowledgement, as if they followed his orders despite being his seniors. No tricks, Carlia, or I'll cut you down where you stand. Brynjolf walked to her without showing any trust, but willing to hear her out. Now what's this so-called proof you speak of? I have Gallus' journal. He had it on him when he was killed I didn't have time to translate it since it was written in Famur, but I'm sure there is something in it that clears my name. Carlia said. In the game, Carlia translates the journal before bringing it to the guild, but from the accident that happened and Mercer bringing a lying with Arch-Wizard Messenger and Maven Blackbriar, the events have shifted greatly. But Carlia is right. This journal is the evidence she needs. Well, it needs to be translated first. Brynjolf didn't lessen the hostility, so in the meantime, I'll translate it. John handed out his hand to take the journal. You can read Falmeri? Carlia asked. Yeah. John put on a mocking smile. A mysticism master doesn't know a thing such as a language barrier. He then passed the journal to Brynjolf along with a magic scroll. You can use the spell inside the scroll on yourself and read the journal. I am doing this because others trust you more than me, so you do the translation yourself, Bryn. He said. Thank you, John. Brynjolf appreciated John's gesture, as the two had some baseline trust in one another. As he used the scroll of the mysticism expert spell, linguistic comprehension, Brynjolf started skimming through journal before the spell wears out. He understood the words and realized that they were all true and not fabricated illusions. What he read terrified him, and he couldn't stop his hands from trembling with visible anger. No, it can't be. This can't be true. I've known Mercer too long. It's true, Brynjolf. Every word. Mercer's been stealing from the guild for years, right under your noses. Carlia knew what was inside the journal, judging by Brynjolf's reactions. We opened the vault. Brynjolf said, What is written here is all true. Wait just a blessed moment, Bryn. What's in that journal? What did it say? It was then when Delvin asked Brynjolf to reveal what was in the note. It says Mercer's been stealing from our vault for years. Gallus was looking into it before he was murdered. Brynjolf replied, clearing Carlia's name for good. The whole guild fell silent, as the truth can't be darker than this. Not only did their guild master steal from them, but he even killed the former guild master and pinned it on Carlia. They may have had some trust in Mercer, as he was a very good thief and led the guild during its darkest hours. And even with the inner struggle in the guild, this was too much. How can Mercer open up a vault that needs 2 keys? It's impossible. Could he even lockpick his way in? Delvin asked both John and Brynjolf. John said to me that wouldn't the best thief in the guild be able to open the 2 locks all by himself if he really wanted to? I didn't want to believe it, but now I want to know how. That door has the best puzzle locks money can buy. There's no way it can be picked open. Vex stated. He didn't need to pick the lock. Carlia replied. What's she on about? Delvin didn't seem to be able to comprehend it. You open the vault with your keys, right? John said the door was just fine. I've used my key, right, but the vault was still locked up tighter than a drum. Just how? Delvin shouted, Enough with the puzzles. Reveal it now. Brynjolf himself was confused even though he read the journal Gallus wrote. Carlia and John knew the truth, and as Carlia was sworn not to reveal the secrets of Nocturnal, it was John who had to explain. I'm sure you all heard the legends about the best thieves on Tamriel, the Trinity of the Nightingale Order. John said, It's a myth, John. Vex didn't buy it. It appears not. Brynjolf said as he raised the journal, Gallus, Carlia, and Mercer, they were all nightingales. An order within the guild? Vex asked, and mistrust was written all over her face. Don't get us wrong, girl. Carlia spoke. The guild and the nightingales are one and the same, always have been. It was like that for centuries until Mercer's betrayal. Why do you think the luck of the guild has run dry? Why do you think everyone was having a terrible time with the guild's work? So, it really was a curse? Delvin asked. We're cursed. By the 8 and 9. All the thieves exclaimed. Yes. What Mercer stole was the boon of the shadows that hid our tracks and watched over us as we thieved. He stole our luck, and with it, he became the most powerful thief in the world. If we don't stop him and restore the blessings of Nocturnal, we will all face certain ruin. Carlia said. Nocturnal? A thief asked, so we are worshipping Deidre now? No. Carlia shook her head. But it is Nocturnal who is the patron of all thieves. When you rob and steal, you draw luck from her. You don't need to worship her, but you need the boon of Lady Luck. We all do. Then I believe we are all understanding our situation here. John said, the guild is going to pursue Mercer until we restore things to order. Until then, I will operate here to hunt Mercer and Maven and to settle my grudge with that wizard messenger for hurting my woman. Also, we will start treating the situation about the nightingales with a degree of importance. I am sorry, Carlia, but from now onwards, there is no shadow organization behind the shadow organization. I'm fine with that. Carlia nodded, being the only follower of Nocturnal in this gathering. All in favor? John asked the thieves. Aye. Brynjolf nodded. Finally, Delvin clapped with his emotions on fire. I'll be killing Mercer, Vex said, driven by her anger. The entire guild seemed united for the first time in years, and with that, John stood at the center of it all. Chapter 665, The Vampire and the Avenger. Chapter 665, The Vampire and the Avenger. So, do we have a plan? Delvin asked as he ordered all the thieves to gather per John's request. It is a simple one. The guild now is as good as bare. Before we can operate anything, we need to get everyone in line and regain the streets of Rift End. John replied, You're going circles around the problem like this again? This is what got us into trouble in the first place. Vex protested. I say we turn the rift upside down until we find Mercer and off him. You can't do that, said Carlia, who was resting her back to the wall behind the guildmaster's desk when John and Delvin stood. Other than Sir John, no one here is enough to overwhelm Mercer in combat, unless we swarm him in one go. He was always ruthless and merciless. Brynjolf spoke in a heavy tone. This means not only has he abandoned the guild, but he is also working against it with no sense of regret and will drop you dead the moment he catches you off guard. Carlia said with sadness visible on her, as she never really forgot how Gallus died to Mercer. Focus on getting our affairs back together. That should be the priority of those who are staying here. Delvin finally added, that would be Tanilia, Vekal, Vex, and Julliner. Is she staying? Vex asked while looking at Jull. Yes. John nodded as his eyes met Julliner and continued. Julliner needs to recover, and she can run the scene in the guild alongside you all. I have a few properties in the city that she knows, and you can access them if you want to operate up there. There are small-time restaurants, old inns, some workshops, and a couple of warehouses. Moreover, I have some thugs and ruffians on payroll, and they're stationed around these places. They don't know who they work for since I've been using a shell company to buy these places during my fight with Maven, and now is the time to utilize them. Once you spread over the city, I know very well that you know how to do business. It will not put the best impression between us and the people, but start extorting money, breaking stuff, demanding protection fees, and giving loans with intense interest rates. Even though I grew up in the city and I love its people, I want to punish them for siding with Maven Blackbriar for my own selfish reasons. Still, if I ever hear about a dead body or you fucks going too far, I'll come down on you like the wrath of God Almighty, and you'd pray it was the headsman block that had saved you from me. Understand? John explained how the guild will start operating in the next couple of days. Thieving is of no use at the moment since all the thieves are disadvantaged and cursed as they believe. However, John started coming up with an alternative for the crumbling crime syndicate he is now taking over. From a fallen guild that runs on smuggling, burglary, and laundering money, John started turning this scene into a mafia-like operation that will be focused on Rift Inn. Rift Inn has indeed been a thorn on John's side for some time, and has always sided with Maven. Even though it wasn't exactly their fault since Maven was already an established ringleader, it is customary for a city to be torn upside down when a new boss comes to town. John also wanted the Thieves Guild to be aggressive. This will give them a good boost to evolve into the next phase of their evolution, from old-fashioned crime to organized crime. Organized crime has many advantages over the current way things are happening. While the guild showed signs of reformation a few times, the old mindset was still strong in people like Vex and Brynjolf who were good at sneaking and swindling. Now, with this shift, the situation will be more of a business rather than a circus for the underground freaks. John had this plan in mind for some time, but he didn't want to use it before he hunts down Mercer. However, with the Blackbriars without a leader, it is time to push into Rift Inn and completely swallow it over. Those who rejected him will be between the Thieves Guild and the Dare Dragon Trading Company, i.e., the rock and a hard place. Meanwhile, he will go around and slaughter the Blackbriar entire clan and its relatives as well as their mercenaries, Archwizard Messenger, and Mercer Fry, of course. He may have deviated a bit from the story, but he had no idea how unexpected this deviation was going to lead him. A few moments before Jellinar woke up, Serana took her leave and headed back to her business. She was ready to leave Rift Inn and go to Whiterun, where Fort Greymoor stands, the place where her family of vampires stays. She didn't want to stay around Jellinar because she didn't want Jellinar to recognize her. Serana was very smart and managed to deduce that John hasn't told Jellinar about her in particular. She may know about him having a vampire ally like Serana, but not Serana in person. The reason here is because Jellinar knows that Serana is leading a vampire family while John is unaware of the matter. If he finds out, she isn't sure how he will react since she won't be fully relying on him for her revenge. This family is something that she must keep out of John's radar at all costs. But as she was traveling in the woods of the Rift, her radar picked on one of her family members, a vampire that she has converted herself. She immediately started to heighten her senses and discovered that where that signal came from, there were sounds of horse hooves and clinking metal. This caused her to bolt out of the way up to a high tree where she can survey the situation. It was then when a patrol of armed men passed by with a wagon reinforced with steel. The sight alerted Serana to the fact that those men were the Dawn Guard, the newly reformed order of vampire hunters that came toe-to-toe with the rising number of vampire attacks as of late. Inside that wagon was a vampire that surely belonged to Serana. This means that if this situation is blown up, word may arrive to John that she has been creating vampires and having her own gang. Shit, I need to get the drop on them. Serana's thoughts accelerated as she started to count the men and spy on their formation and their weapons. There is no time before they come to the first checkpoint near the city, and then they will be into Riffin's territory. Whoever is in the wagon will have their fate sealed beyond that point. But as Serana was checking the auras of the living to make a head count before she attacked, she detected several auras off the main road that were hiding behind natural barriers like rocks and trees while closing in on the Dawn Guard patrol. What is happening? Serana wondered as she counted more than 30 non-Dawn Guard combatants. Why would the living ambush the living who are in the vampire hunting affairs? It is not like vampire hunters carry anything of value, and in this type of situation, it is impossible not to figure out that what the Dawn Guard is transporting is a captured vampire. But the ambush was as serious as it can get. The ambushers brought every weapon in the weapons catalog. And when it was all in place, the ambush began. Crossbow bolts started to fly from the treetops, and tree logs slid down the road to break the horses' legs. The Dawn Guard lost 5 combatants from the start and started retreating behind the wagon. Retreat, retreat. The Dawn Guard started to keep their line and fire back at the ambushers, but the situation wasn't in their favor. Serana didn't intervene until she spotted that the ambushers had brought a reinforced wagon of their own, as if they were also ready to capture the vampire. At this rate, the Dawn Guard will be annihilated, and the ambushers will capture whoever is in there. Serana thought, and immediately she cast the bound bow spell. From the hiding of tree leaves, Serana drew the bow and shot one spectral arrow at one of the ambushers staying at the back of their formation. It was amidst the shooting of crossbows, so her mysterious arrow went unnoticed. She then fired again and again and again. Her marksmanship wasn't great, but it was enough to hit unmoving targets. She learned some marksmanship from the Dark Brotherhood assassins and used it repeatedly in addition to her spellcasting so that she can deal with such situations. Eventually, Serana's unnoticed help was the equalizer the Dawn Guard needed to recover from the ambush. Those Dawn Guard are tougher than expected. "Release the hounds," shouted one of the ambushers as a few men with distinctive executioner hoods came from the back. Each of them had 2 ropes that are tied to 2 ferocious-looking dogs. "Go! Get them!" Right away, the men released the dogs, and around 18 of them bolted ahead like the wind. While the Dawn Guard would train dogs of their own, these dogs were fierce and monstrous, as if possessed by something. In this situation, Serana had no way of protecting the Dawn Guard convoy using her arrows. She had to personally step in, but just as she was about to, "Fuck it," release the troll. One of the Dawn Guard carried a big hammer and immediately shattered the lock on their reinforced wagon before it burst open with a terrible roar from within. An ice troll, reinforced in all manners of armored bladed iron, walked out with a menacing look and a murderous glare on its 3 eyes. It wasn't a well-established rumor just yet, but the Dawn Guard seemed to have been taming the trolls for combat uses, something that is seen as madness by many. Once the troll was out, it hit the nearest Dawn Guard by mistake before immediately turning to the coming hounds. With one swing of its arms, a hound was captured, bound on the ground, and thrown at another, killing the first and crippling the second. The troll was indeed mighty, and its armor was bladed and spiked, something that caused the ambushers to panic profoundly. As for Serana, she immediately took a peek inside the wagon. "Lurbuck, you damn fool." Serana cursed as she saw the vampire orc chained and bound in a sorry state inside the wagon. This was one of her servants and someone she was obliged to save to make sure the rest are okay. Immediately, Serana descended from the tree and sped to the shadows while the troll and the Dawn Guard were starting to retaliate at the ambushers. Once there were only 3 Dawn Guard combatants left to guard the wagon, Serana took the opportunity. She immediately moved in a swarm of bats, bypassed the first Dawn Guard with a dagger in his chest, used his axe to split the second skull, and gripped the third by his neck and twisted it the wrong way. With that, she jumped in the wagon, slapped the worn and torn vampire orc, and offered him an arm she just tore from one of the Dawn Guards to drink its blood. "Lurbuck, you fool." She shook off the dazed vampire. "Say, Serana?" Lurbuck recognized the voice of his mistress even in his sorry state. "The others? Are they well? Did anyone else get captured?" She asked in a hurry. "Is the project okay?" "Wait. No one." Lurbuck tried to reply, but he used his fangs to draw more blood in order to sober up quickly. "Only I was captured. I was away from the fort for reasons." "All right, let's get you out of here first," she said and dragged Lurbuck out, but immediately she was attacked by 5 of the hounds that were let loose on the Dawn Guard. "Shit, they fell already?" Serana wanted to use her vampire powers, but out of nowhere, 3 flying axes hit the hounds' necks deeply and dropped them on the spot. With a galloping noise, an armored fighter jumped off a horse, with a blade in each hand, axes on the belt, shield on the back, and armor on everywhere else, and they joined the fray. With one swing, they killed the 4th hound, and with the next, they killed the 5th. 3 more hounds gathered ahead, trying to encircle the fighter, but immediately, hisses, they hissed like an angry cat. The hiss was so powerful that it had aura mixed in, and it terrified the hounds. As they backed away, the fighters started killing them systematically. "You stay here. I'll save the others." The fighter turned to Serana, who was seen trying to help a very injured man. The voice was very unique and feminine, implying that under the owl helm, there was a female Cagiate. As the Cagiate rushed for the fight, Serana noticed the emblem of House Dare, which John usually wears, engraved on the center of the Cageot's segmented armor. A Dare mercenary. Lurbuck, you get out of here. Get back to the fort, and don't stop until you get there. I understand. I'm sorry. Lurbuck, who now had some power in his messed-up legs, healed fast and started running per Serana's orders. She was going to secure his back and get rid of any pursuers, but as soon as she turned back, a large object came flying towards her. The armored troll was completely charred with fire magic in order to prevent its insane regeneration, and with that, he was blasted back so badly with a magic attack that it landed on the wagon and broke its half. Secure the vampire before it gets free, shouted one of the ambushers. Immediately, more men with hounds started to flood over, as well as ambusher crossbowmen. The only thing they could register as a vampire right now is Serana, who just evaded the falling troll by jumping sideways. Don't you ignore me. Meanwhile, the Dare mercenary Cageot was in a bloody mess of her own. She rushed over the corpses of the fallen Dawn Guard and started killing the ambushers like crazy. Her blade would slice one's neck and make a mess of their remaining limbs. Many men and women fell to her vicious attacks in mere seconds before they started to recover from her charge. Meanwhile, Serana was attacked by the hounds, but she managed to fend them off with her claws while retreating into the fray rather than out of it. In mere seconds, the vampire and the Dare mercenary were fighting back to back as they bitterly recognized a common enemy. The mercenary, however, was very focused on killing. You Fong clan bastards, Akira will slaughter you all, spoke the Dare mercenary while she was berserking, or rather cat-cirking. Immersive word, very nice. It's the Avenger, shouted one of the ambushers. That bitch again. Shit, grab the vampire and go, shouted another. The ambushers seemed frustrated all of a sudden, but immediately, a man rushed through the lines with two blades like Akira and immediately struck her. She parried, countered, recovered, parried again, so on and so forth. He was as impressive as Akira with how artistic he fought, and went even further as he estimated her skill in 2 rounds. With one upward strike, he sent her helmet flying. A white female Cageot with an impressive wild mane stood her ground with growling fangs and blood-red eyes. You want John Dare's dogs? The man asked before correcting himself. His cats, I mean. Yufong clan will die by my hand. All of you. Akira shouted, and before she attacked, the man tore open a scroll and cast it on her to freeze her immediately. I think John Dare shouldn't learn we are here. The last thing I want him to do is to come rushing with Carlia and the rest of them. The man said, get the vampire quickly. Serana heard what he said and almost paused. Carlia and the rest of them? Seeing the man, he was middle-aged and using a normal sword and a dwarven one. Unmistakably, this is Mercer Fry. While this was none of Serana's business, she looked around and suddenly grabbed the frozen Akira from her arm. In a flash, she dispelled her frozen state and threw her as far as her vampiric power could support her. Serana was launched in the air up to 10 meters high and 30 meters far before crashing down and rolling near her horse. Shit, what did she just say? Akira heard it. Serana whispered something to her right away, and looking at the woman among the crowd of ambushers, she saw her surrender with a mischievous smile. Immediately, Akira sobered from her rage and rode her horse as far and as fast as she possibly could in the direction of Riften. Chapter 666, Suffering from Success. Chapter 666, Suffering from Success. It was dark and damp when Akira arrived at the Ratway. The clinking metal she was wearing wasn't fitting in this part of town and weighed her down, but as she passed through the thugs and ruffians of the underground, she didn't stop and kept going onward. The moment she stops, she will get into trouble. She roughly estimated the location of the Ragged Flagon, and as she went closer, the ruffians who were on her tail started to back off. However, when she arrived, the place seemed sealed up tight with several menacing-looking people. Who are you here for? A man blocked her way at the entrance of the flagon and questioned the purpose of her presence. Akira may have grown up in Rift Inn, but unlike John, she wasn't versed with the ways of the Ratway. She preferred to stay clear from these places and only heard rumors and stories about them. But right now, she was certain that John is in this place, and she directly came for him. She wished that the emblem on her armor would vouch for her at the entrance, but if not, she just had to say his name. John Dare, she said. Got no one here called that. The man replied. It wasn't as easy as she expected, but she is certain that he is here. After all, the vampire that saved her has told her that. Find John the Ratway. He is after them. Those were the words Serena left Akira with when she threw her outside the encirclement of the ambushers. The Dawnguard patrol was annihilated, and Serena seemed to be surrendering, but if one was to look closer, she wasn't the vampire that was captured by the Dawnguard. The Dawnguard would tear the vampires, they capture limb from limb, before leaving them to slowly heal on the way to the brutal execution grounds and torture dungeons. Akira could only seek John now that her target of vengeance, the Fong clan, was having some sort of a strong backer that gave them extra men and magical scrolls. So neither the Thieves' Guild nor the Dark Brotherhood can dissuade her from seeking him at the moment. He is my lord, Akira said, pointing at her armor. This one came for urgent business. Got something to say? Say it here. The man said as he tied his arms with a scornful glare. I have no time for this, Akira said, and walked around the man. As she did so, he immediately tried to block her path as they pushed against one another. The man was pushed away very easily. Despite appearances, the medium-sized Akira is a member of the Dare Corps, a group of elite who get training in the subtle art of aura, which gives them strength and speed beyond the peak human level. This small army of super soldiers was John's pride and joy and his enemies' terror and fear. Akira's strength was something that made the thieves present in the ragged flagon all come to maximum alertness. The man whom she just pushed down sprung up on his feet and tried to grapple her, but she immediately twisted his arm and bashed his head into the nearest wall. Dirge! What an interesting sound! Akira wondered as the man fell unconscious from her reflexive defense. Hold it right there. But then, a voice spoke out, one she was familiar with. Akira turned ahead and saw Julliner walking from the area behind the flagon. She's all right, Julliner said. Commander, Akira replied with a slight bow. Sergeant Akira. Julliner nodded. What is a commanding officer doing here? This one is on leave, Commander, Akira replied. However, this one came into contact with information that may be of interest to Lord John. I know he is here, so I rushed to meet him. You just missed him, Sergeant, Julliner replied. Then where can he be? Akira asked. He is on the lookout for some political enemies of ours. His schedule is sensitive, so... Do you have anything to report to me? I do, Akira said. I was hunting the Fong clan. Akira then proceeded to summarize her situation to Julliner as she was tracking a certain bandit group, known as the Fong clan, and they seemed to have joined forces with some other marauders and mercenaries. She then told her about them ambushing a Dawnguard patrol and a vampire telling her that John is in the Ratway, and to go seek his help since she found what he is currently looking for. What John is looking for, but he is currently hunting for Maven and Mercer, Julliner deduced quickly. This vampire? I don't care about it, but they must be some of John's secret projects. Was there any old man with long hair that is wielding two blades, one of which is dwarven? Yes, I crossed blades with such a man, and I was outmatched. Akira said. Figures. Julliner nodded. Fine, I'll tell you where to find John. Maven Blackbriar once owned an estate away from Rift Inn, and it was there where the search started. The Blackbriar estate was one of the good houses as well as one of the most guarded ones. However, John stormed the place with grace, holding nothing but a single short sword. He morphed his appearance into that of a normal person and shortened his height to seem less intimidating. That way, the mercenaries guarding the location would rush at him without feeling threatened too much. Just as he planned, once he walked near the estate, An arrow was let loose towards him, which he deflected with the side of his sword very skillfully. "I can't ask some questions if none of you mind," Jean said as he surveyed the location with the bird familiar that was circling above the tree level. He was very careful, just in any case the wizard messenger is nearby, but that wasn't the case after a round of detection. Neither messenger, nor maven, nor mercer. There were some traps prepared inside the main building, as well as 45 mercenaries, but that was all. No maven or any other high-profile target. For that, John would need people to question, even for the tiniest of clues. Sadly, the mercenaries who were placed here were uncooperative. "All right, there's 45 of you, and only me, so I'm going to start killing, and you're going to start dying. It will be indiscriminate, but I will do it with extreme prejudice. If you wish to live, make sure you tell me where Maven is. Clear?" John spoke to the first patch of 3 mercenaries that came to greet him, but they all acted roughly and even initiated to attack. The man who tried to hold John with an effortless move found that his guts were spilling on the ground and his body becoming so weak that he can no longer stay standing. Seeing their first die with an unseeable attack, the other 2 attacked with their weapons immediately. John cut the second sword arm, causing his weapon and arm to drop, and redirected the third's axe to land on the second's face. "Look what you made me do." John stuck his sword effortlessly in the third's guts and abandoned his weapon before taking the axe from the second face and apologizing for disfiguring him before death. Now with the axe, John climbed the road towards the estate, but suddenly, click open, step, 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 step. The remaining 42 men inside the manor all charged out following the death screams of their comrades. They all lined up so quickly and orderly in a single line as they all held repeater crossbows. "Hey, those are Dare property. How'd you get your hands on them?" John was immediately triggered seeing the crossbow model, which he personally developed being used by his enemies. As all crossbows were aimed at him, he immediately took cover behind a conveniently placed small boulder at the side. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Click, 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 click. The bolts flew towards him from the ground level, the first balcony, the attic windows, and the front barn as well. All these bolts were dodged as he took his cover, and they all started to break on the rock. "Okay, now I'm pissed." John immediately imbued the axe in his hand with magicka and threw it off. With his 2 hands, he started channeling strings of energy and swirling them around before starting to tile them and move them in a sweeping fashion. As the axe was thrown, it was completely under John's influence as it rotated mid-air and took a curve following John's hand movements. "Watch out!" A mercenary shouted for his comrades to dodge, but the axe accelerated towards the barn. As it entered, it left in its wake a blast of magicka that devastated all who were inside and kept flying and hitting whoever was in its path. John directed it to keep flying, and the mercenaries tried to run from the estate manor, but his magic was designed to be inescapable. While only killing whoever it directly hits, those who were incapacitated were left either injured or stunned for John to question later. As for those who managed to fortify themselves inside the manor, there were just 9. In a single attack, John took out 33 mercenaries. The spell he used was a mixture of apprentice and novice spells that were focused on one thing. "You do not steal from me and get away with it," John said as he stood from behind the boulder and was about to move towards the manor, but he stopped and looked towards the boulder with narrow eyes. Inside the Blackbriar Manor, the ones gathered inside were 8 mercenaries and their employer, Hemming Blackbriar. "What was that out there?" Hemming Blackbriar asked with his face ashen pale. He wasn't outside with the rest of the men, but the noises he heard made his heart sink. He could barely breathe as the place inside became dark even though it was still the time of noon. "I don't know. It's just one man. He turned everyone else into nothing. It's crazy." The mercenaries spoke in panic as they all barred the doorway of the manor with any piece of furniture or clutter they could get their hands on. They had to think fast in order to come up with an idea on how to escape whatever was coming their way. "Hurry to the back. There are horses," Hemming Blackbriar said to one of the mercenaries. Make some of them run towards the direction of the north. Attract the attacker that way. Right. The mercenaries started to think along with Hemming and rushed to the back before anyone would come. The attacker may indeed try to. *BOHA. Star. But whatever he was thinking was just wishful thinking as something big rushed at him from the door he was about to open. Everyone saw the man fly towards them and crush into a wall before falling dead. It seemed that the man Hemming asked for the horses had indeed come back with a horse, except that this one was as large as a young mammoth and as black as the ink of the kraken. Moreover, it had 8 legs, and its face simply had the figure of a horse, but it was just a black mess with no eyes or ears or hair. Fuck, what is that? The remaining mercenaries panicked as they found a beast of mysterious origins blocking their path to escape. But this wasn't the end of it. Crush. Part of the manor that was built with timber suddenly started to crack, as if it was being torn like paper. The entire front entrance, along with the doorway, was torn off the main building by a giant made of bones. Wrath stood there as it tore everything and stared down at the 8 men with red, menacing eyes. Greetings! A loud voice came from beneath the bone giant as a mysterious man walked through the rubble. He looked at the mercenaries as they looked like they were at their wits' end. He chuckled as he drew closer. Silly me, and here I was thinking you were worth anything. I thought Maven hired some elites or something. John said as he looked closely at the men. They're my guards. It was then when Hemming Blackbriar spoke. They're not my mother's guards. Hemming couldn't recognize John as the latter was still keeping a different appearance, but seeing Wrath standing behind the man, there was no doubt this man was sent by John Dare. Oh, almost forgot about you, Hemming. John said, where is your esteemed mother? Not here, Hemming replied. Figured as much myself. That's why I was asking you, genius. John scoffed. Just tell me where she is, and I'll let you live, truly. What? Hemming frowned. You want me to tell on my mother? Yes, and be quick about it. I don't have all day. John said naturally. Impossible. Hemming shook his head and tried to back away. John then chuckled and looked at the ground while shaking his head. When he raised his eyes, he looked at the remaining mercenaries. My generous offer extends to all of you. Whoever points me to Maven's location will be spared. He said, these men are... Hemming tried to speak for them, but reality slapped him so hard. They moved west. A mercenary spoke. They had a carriage prepared for her and a personal healer. Another said, the wizard ordered her transport. We have no idea since we don't work for him. Another added, the old woman was aging so fast we thought it was a curse. The wizard seemed determined to cure her. I heard him say it. One more said, one of their men is an explorer from Shore's Stone. I know his house. Another continued, they also move with the Fong clan. The clan's hideout is somewhere in the forest between East March and the Rift. The last said, the 7 remaining mercenaries spilled the beans faster than what it takes to blink. John did indeed blink a few times afterwards, then moved away from the broken doorway and pointed for them to go out. Even Wrath moved out of the way. The mercenaries looked at each other and lowered their stances as they passed by John. They were almost certain that Wrath would slaughter them, but as they really passed, and no one did attack them, they just started running like crazy. Well, Mr. Hemming, your men were really fluent people just a while ago. John said and walked in. I am in a bad mood, but I can still give you one more opportunity. Hemming Blackbriar had his back to a wall and couldn't think of any way he could run out of this. Nevertheless, he wouldn't give his own mother up. You won't get a thing from me. Hemming said, fine. John sighed. I'll let it deal with you. Hemming heard those words and hurriedly looked between Sleipnir of Greed and Odokuro of Wrath. They looked menacing, and the thought of being handled by one of them made his innards squeeze very badly. But the thing John was referring to wasn't any of the two. From his skin, a translucent substance started to form and separate completely from him. John's appearance started to return to that of his normal self, and the substance started to take the form of a beautiful, ethereal woman. But Hemming was now all focused on John. John Dare! I had to come up in a different form just so you guys don't start running the moment you see my handsome face. John was indeed approaching the estate with a different face so that none of the mercenaries start running the moment they see him. As for Venus of Lust, she walked like a ghost, and just about she was going to touch him, he cried out right away. I'll talk. I'll fucking talk. Hemming shouted now that he was in front of John Dare. Man, life is truly hard when there is no challenge. Can't believe I am suffering from success. If you leave a comment/review/vote/rate, you will help motivating the author and promote the novel. Chapter 667, Akira's Dilemma. Chapter 667, Akira's Dilemma. So speak. John sat on a chair, facing Hemming Blackbriar, who was on his knees. I don't know the exact location my mother is, but that wizard messenger is the one who took her. Hemming said, I can figure out that much on my own. John's eyes turned from their usual calm to a menacing glare as he leaned forward. Hemming immediately continued to add as much information as possible. The wizard and my mother had some sort of an agreement about saving her. He took her away despite my protests, and Mercer Fry seemed to be answering to him. Hemming said, So, this guy, he's the one giving orders now? I thought he was only working for Maven. John frowned and analyzed the information in his head, but it still doesn't make any sense. If he is an arch-wizard the same as I, he must have accumulated a decent amount of wealth and influence. Why work for Maven? What is his true motive? John's question made Hemming's face brighten up for some reason. I know that, he said joyfully. Then you should have started with it. John smacked Hemming's head with zero patience. Yes, I'm sorry. Hemming cowered while answering. That wizard was looking for an artifact that was rumored to be here in Rift Inn. Fuck off. John held his head. That damn rumor from half a year ago. Seeing John dissatisfied, Hemming lost his words as he tried to say something. It was, at first, that was a scam. Hemming said. A scam. John frowned. Yes, a scam. Hemming nodded like a chicken. My mother made up that rumor in order to draw out mercenaries and treasure hunters from all of the holds. Once they deplete their money looking for a treasure that didn't exist, they would willingly accept her help and become her men. Fucking, John wanted to curse and cuss, but he ended up being baffled. Why didn't I think of something like that? But what Mother didn't know was that there is actually an artifact hidden in the rift. Hemming said, making it sound like a big deal. Duh. John nodded. I know of several artifacts scattered around the rift myself. Yes, but from what I could overhear, Wizard Messenger was looking for that artifact in the rift a couple of years before the rumor. So Maven caused trouble for his operation? John asked. On the contrary, they saw eye to eye and decided to form a front in order to solve each other's problems. Hemming corrected. Uh-huh. Me, being your mother's problems, and the artifact being Messenger's problem. John understood that situation. Indeed, Hemming was happy he corrected John. But still, Messenger is an arch-wizard. You can't reach that level without being someone with money and status. Why did he agree to help Maven against someone like me? To me, he wouldn't gain as much as he would lose. John kept pressing on. That, Hemming couldn't reply for a second there, and kept thinking, but a bitter expression appeared on his face. He was sleeping with her? John asked. I don't know. Hemming answered in a frustrated voice. She betrayed you, didn't she? John smiled and leaned forward. You were her favorite toy boy, right? You dirty swine did your own mother. What the? Hemming shuddered from what John said. Not true. I did my research. You're almost 35 this year. Your mother gave birth to you when she was 16. After you were old enough, she had you in her bed, and thanks to your retarded inbred genes, you gave her 2 more retards. Sibby, a sociopath that doesn't feel any guilt or remorse, and Ingen, a psychopath with no emotions nor humanity. John described Maven's last 2 children to Hemming. I killed Sibby because he was a bother, but Ingen left the family the moment her mother was no longer of use. Please, feel free to correct me. Hemming looked at John with blank emotions covering a lot of agony. The things that Maven has done to him and the things John kept digging around him, it was all so suffocating. Don't get me wrong, Hemming. I know you were one of Maven's victims. She loved Sibby and Ingen, and you were merely a tool. You know that, and I don't want to keep bringing it up. John played his words carefully and watched Hemming's expression switch and change. So, shouldn't you do anything about it? Hemming remained silent for a while before looking at John again. Do what? He asked. What do you desire, Hemming Blackbriar? John asked, then started to marvel how that sentence really rhymed well. Meanwhile, Hemming didn't notice it, but Venus of Lust was already behind him, holding his shoulders softly and giggling with no sound. I want everything, Hemming replied. Go on. John sent Venus back and made sure that Hemming's mind isn't too diluted with side thoughts. I want to be as powerful as her. I want her to look at me and know that I am better than her. Attaboy. John put on a wide grin. You want to surpass her? Yes. She was just a thug. She pushed people around with money, but she had no real vision other than making her money grow. She was the kind to hoard money, not use it right. Hemming's tongue was set loose. Nice, but she's still out there. John said, you can't do anything from here, too. Last I checked, you only had some weak guards while she controls a legion of mercenaries on her deathbed. Yeah, Hemming nodded, but then with determination, he said something that pleased John. I know how to put a stop to that. Truly, John's eyes lit up. How? She's still drawing money from Rift Inn. She has proxies and shell companies that provide her with gold and information. Hemming said, so you can control that? John asked. All I need is to get control of the meadery. When that is in my hand, I can spread the rumor that she is dead and dump the money somewhere else. He said, good plan. John nodded, but make sure to do it slowly. Doing it too fast will cause your associates to know that you're turning against Maven. John had the perfect plan, and thanks to Hemming, he can now execute it. Never did he think that Hemming Blackbriar would be this useful. All right, I am releasing you back to Rift Inn, Hemming. Make sure you report to the Thieves' Guild and inform them of your plan. I'll send a word about you. John said, stood up from his chair, and raised his hand as he cast his arcane energy to lift Hemming Blackbriar up from the ground and make him stand. John then started to fix Hemming's coat and dust it off his shoulders. Off with you. There are horses in the back. Hurry now, will you? He even cleared the way for Hemming to move away. Yes, I'll go. Hemming nodded and retreated away, not daring to give his back to John. Still, one thing on his mind made him stop and look back at John. My mother, will you kill her? He asked. Maven's death should be the least of your troubles because I already killed her. John said, I think you saw how she turned into nothing but a husk that is void of life. What I want to do is to make sure that husk doesn't turn into a ghost and haunt everyone. And I also want to settle the score with her lover wizard. I see. Hemming seemed to have understood that there is no way out of this and left John immediately. Technically, Maven is already dead, but who knows? The arch-wizard by her side may be crafty enough to figure out a thing or two about these conditions. But even John can't help with fixing an astral damage that goes to the point where Maven would age like dried grapes. The case of astral damage he put himself into when he was meditating with natural magicka was nothing like the one Potema of envy can cause. Anyway, John was pleased with the results of getting his hands on Hemming Blackbriar. Soon, Maven's mercenaries will start leaving her side en masse when Hemming dries up her funds. Then, it will be easy to find a mercenary that knows where she is and will receive payment for information. Moreover, John's main goal was to get rid of the ones who supported Maven from all her underlings to her business associates, since they should be made an example of. Hemming Blackbriar should be the best tool to do so in association with the Thieves' Guild. But this and that aside, John turned his face in a certain direction and smiled. Come out, whoever you are, he called out playfully. Standing away from the main road to the Blackbriar estate, a figure emerged whose eyes were feline and fur was white. John saw her and seemed to have sensed her presence for a while. Akra. John smiled at the young Khajiit lady. I am sorry, John. She approached him apologetically. What for? He frowned. Akira didn't heed your warning about seeking revenge, she said. What's wrong? He asked and walked over to her while trying to take a good look at her face. Akira has been tracking the Fawn clan for a while. They seem to have joined hands with the adventurers that were roaming the rift. Akira reported. They did anything to you, girl? John asked with a serious face. No. Akira killed some of them in a few places, but the last one is what turned into a huge mess. She said, for some reason, they attacked a Dawn Guard patrol that was transporting a captured vampire. Akira intervened, but soon after, we ran into a strong foe whom you seem to be after. It seemed to be Mercer Fry, from what Commander Julliner told me. You fought Mercer? John got worked up immediately. When and where? How'd it go? Akira was on a losing end, but as all the Dawn Guard people got killed by the Fawn clan hounds and the other mercenaries, Akira was left to fight back alongside that vampire they were trying to capture. Strange enough, the vampire woman threw me away from the fight and let herself be captured. She also told me to find and report to John in Rift 10. Serana. John realized who the vampire woman was. She can't be captured. She is far stronger than Mercer and a few mercenaries. Akira reported all she could for now. She said, and lowered her head, this one is sorry that her vengeance interrupted your work. John narrowed his eyes, since Akira isn't normally this polite. Her attitude, which she inherited from her Caravaner parents, is her worst trait since she is mostly deceptive and sly. Still, her emotions were indeed riled up by what happened. The Fawn clan is a group of bandits whose leader is a wood elf called Earther, the Bearmaster. This gang was known to tame animals to fight for them. Such animals would start from regular hounds to saber cats and bears. They may sound a lot like the Firemane clan that also tame animals, but unlike the Firemans, the Fawn clans are outlaws and train their animals using a mixture of herbs to turn them very feral during fights and keep controlling them with these herbs until they expire. Akira's parents were killed by these animals 16 years ago. According to the guards of Rift End back then, they were so mutilated and eaten that they were put on a single grave piece by piece, since no one was able to tell which part was which. If not for Akira being locked in a barrel by her parents back then, she would have met the same fate. She was a fast girl to recover and learn how to channel her anger into revenge, but the situation was against her now that the Fawn clan is one of the forces under Maven. John held Akira by the back of her head and hugged her closely, and she hugged him back. He knows how frustrated she is right now, and the only thing he can do is offer her his help. I will help you with the other bandits. Make sure you slay as many of the Fawn clan bastards as you can. John said, right. She agreed to his help. As for the vampire they took, I don't know what she is thinking, but that couldn't be the one that was being transported. Why? First, she was just with me in Rift Inn, meaning that whoever was being transported, she saved them. Serana wouldn't save a vampire of her kind since I am her only ally, unless that was Babette, or maybe I am overthinking it. John said, second, the Dare Industries sold those reinforced carriages to the Dawn Guard. They're made of 2 chambers, the first where the vampire is locked, and the second where a troll is locked. It is a very complicated thing, and a vampire is constantly getting mutilated by the troll as the 2 keep regenerating until the vampire is drained. No vampire can fight after that. John and Akira parted from each other's embrace, and she looked at him as he thought for a while. I don't know what Serana is thinking, but if Mercer and the mercenaries are trying to capture a vampire, there is no other reason for it unless it is to inflict Maven Blackbriar with vampirism. This will reform her damaged astral form with a Daedric animus. John added, so is it bad news? Akira asked. Depending on how good Serana is at turning people into vampires. Maven's condition is severe enough that I don't think she would survive, and Serana hasn't converted anyone to a vampire before, so there's a big chance for her failure. He said, so we need to get back to the ambush site and start tracking them. After all, you're not one who wastes chances, John. I love how much you know me, Akira. John pumped fists with her, and the two seemed to be on the same page. John, and Akira, friends for nearly 16 years, are now joining hands in their own little adventure that may or may not end them in bed together. I mean, who knows? Chapter 668, Swinging Fists. Chapter 668, Swinging Fists. After the ambush on the Dawn Guard, Sarana was accompanied by the ambushers to a secret location at some mine. Previously, she found a member of her family being escorted in a Dawn Guard wagon, and she managed to rescue him and let him escape. From him, she realized that he was the only one who was captured and the rest of her gang members were all safe. If that was not the case, she would have been contacted by Ugnis already. But it seemed that no one knew that Lurbuk was taken during a hunt, and by now, Safia should be managing the situation. As for the ambushers, Sarana was curious what they were after. No one would win anything from attacking a Dawn Guard patrol. Even the bandits avoid them to not get caught up with any of that vampire business. Hell, some of the bandits would try to turn a new leaf and join the Dawn Guard disguised as adventurers to leave the life of crime behind. So unless the bandits were vampire thralls, no one would win anything here. So why were these ambushers after her vampire? They seemed to be willing to secure him in a cage wagon and take him to their mine, where they would imprison him in an old cell. To know the answer, Sarana took the role and let them imprison her in order to see how this thing goes. She knew that one of the men here is someone John is after, and by sending the Dare Trooper, she encountered a way. The news will soon reach John. As for getting herself involved, Sarana wasn't completely worried since she was confident enough that when push comes to shove, she can overpower Mercer Fry or escape from an unsuspecting archwizard. She learned from John how to act low-key and not threatening before starting to slap the shit out of those annoying people. But the situation she expected to happen wasn't as bad as she thought. She was indeed put in a cell, but inside of it, she found a man who seemed to have been put there recently. Looking closely at him proved that he is just a regular Imperial. Sarana frowned, but a few seconds later, a man walked in front of her cell. Prosthetic arm, artificial eye, bad head, gray skin. It was exactly the archwizard John was looking for. "You look better than what I suspected you would," he said. Those Dawn Guard animals would usually torture the vampires they get their hands on to a pretty terrible state. The man seemed casual about the way he speaks, and not threatened by the vampire in front of him at all. He is confident, same as John Dare when he acts all high and mighty. Powerful people are similar indeed, but they're not easy to trick. That's why Sarana had to pull on the other trick she learned from John. "I didn't really get any torturing. I wanted to be captured by them for protection," she replied. Telling the truth, that's the big trick. Lying is very easy to spot, but telling the truth is the best way to avoid suspicion. How you tell the truth is up to you. You can tell half the truth, rearrange events, and be creative with metaphors. It is all fair as long as it is the truth. The deceptive truth. "Oh, so we got our hands on a vampire refugee. Never thought I would run into any." Messner said, "What's your story, girl?" He seemed as cocky as John. Sarana rolled her eyes and let out a sigh. "Daddy is a big bad old vampire. He wants me for some really fucked up vampire plots." Sarana replied, "Sounds terrible." Messner smiled. "Tell you what, you help me with my little plot, and I will make it worth your while." "That's your big plan?" Sarana smiled back. "Being friendly to a vampire? Everyone has a price, or so my girlfriend likes to say." Messner said, "Fine, let's trade." Sarana showed no hostility towards Messner's approach, as he was already prepared to fry her to oblivion with many hidden magic traps all over the cell. "Well, let's start with getting back your energy. I left you a snack over there," Messner said, pointing at the Imperial man who was stuck in a corner with his eyes almost popping up from his skull by fear and trauma. "Much obliged. I was just getting peckish." After having her snack, Sarana sat on a chair in her cell, and outside of it, a bed was carried by 4 mercenaries on which was a body. Not your girlfriend, I hope." Sarana spoke to Messner. "As heartbreaking as it is, she happens to be," Messner replied. "My condolences," Sarana said. She's still alive, hanging on. But no worries. Since you are here, I am sure helping her back on her feet won't be a problem. Messner replied in an elevated tone while showing a generous smile to Serana. Wait a minute. If I didn't know any better, I think you are asking me to turn her into a vampire? Serana wasn't sure this is what Messner was aiming for. That's the grand plan. Messner said her life force was depleted badly and she lost a lot of her lifespan when she faced a strong spellcaster. I only think that undeath will preserve her life. To keep her in a state where she can be restored to humanity if she wishes, I see that vampirism is the best cure, as ridiculous as it may seem. Personally, I don't mind, but she's all right with becoming a vampire? Serana asked. She's a strong girl, and despite the powerful curse she was subjected to, she still managed to hang on to a thread of her life. Messner replied. And you are doing this for love? Serana asked again. Well, ain't you a nosy fellow? Messner turned to Serana. I only require you to turn my friend here into a vampire, and I will reward you generously. Actually, she's the one who'll do the rewarding since she is richer than I. Her questions surely annoyed Messner, who treated her nicely just to get to his goal. But to call Maven Blackbriar his girlfriend, Messner is surely hiding something big. Serana could feel the power of Messner, and, as an immortal being, she could sense how much people have lived. That's a sense only people who live for a long time have, and something that even John isn't aware of. To Serana, Messner is past 300 years of age at the very least. Being over 100 years old already fucks your brain up, but being over 300, that's a whole new change. At the age of 100, most who live that long slowly become more apathetic and less caring about bonds. Unless they don't have any connection with a lot of people, they slowly start to lose interest in them. At the age of 200, people would become asexual and lose their sexual drive, even if they are very healthy downstairs. Of course, this can't be generalized, but one can always ask any 200-year-old how they feel about the other sex, and their answer would always be meh. At the age of 300, not all else survive to 300, but those who do are usually the magic practitioners who have developed enough weird kinks in their lifetime to make them unpredictable and unstable. They are basically mad monsters, but thankfully, they always get too busy with their business. Messner was the latest type, and he was putting on a nice act for some reason. If Serana was to serve her purpose, there was no telling whether he would actually give her a hand or not. Of course, Serana wasn't in need of a hand, and she had John as her ally. If she was to betray him, she was sure he wouldn't be as nice as he always is to her. Moreover, Serana and John share a very important and personal thing after they had sex that night beside the river. She needs him with her for the coming part, and to counter any complicated situations. All right, I'll offer my help and inflict your lovely girlfriend with sanguinaire vampirus, Serana said. Messner smiled widely, but, Serana added a but. What is it? He asked. Your girl looks like a husk or a draugr in that state. She was drained so badly that she wouldn't survive turning into a vampire. I'm sure you understand that. Yes, I was meaning to ask for your insight before you go for it. Messner replied. What do you suggest? Well, I can either scratch her or bite her. Serana said, scratching her will be done with magic to cast a vampiric drain. This will drain her vitality directly and will definitely kill her. And the other method is biting. Messner said as he seemed more knowledgeable than he was revealed to be. Yes, biting will directly draw blood from her body. Are you sure she can handle that? Serana said. It is going to be problematic, but I'll figure out a way to support her with vitality. Messner seemed to be well aware of the problem. Then I'll wait for you to handle it. I'd hate to kill a future benefactor. Serana sat in her cell, so calmly, as if she was willing to cooperate after throwing a small pebble in Messner's plan. Meanwhile, Mercer Fry watched things from a distance, and as soon as Messner was done talking with Serana, Mercer and Messner started conversing away from her. She's stalling. Mercer said. It is obvious. Messner replied. I don't like it. Mercer. She seems well-connected. It is our bad luck that we stumbled upon some vampire big shot. Messenger. Will it change anything? Mercer. Nothing so far. If you took the path I enchanted for you, no one would be able to find this old mine. Messenger. Good then, and you sure you really want Maven a vampire? She's been a witch all her life. A vampire Maven is something both terrible and fearful. Mercer asked Messenger about Maven's vampirism for the third time. If I remember correctly, thief, you work for Maven. She is something I want, and that's why we are here. Aside from that, I would have already been on my way. Messenger said, I am wasting time around you humans while my promised legacy awaits. Can't believe I got involved in all this. Then be prepared for when Maven gets back. She'd want revenge against John Dare. Mercer said, I am willing to bet that a vampire Maven will surely put that fucker in his place. As Mercer sounded happy that the current pillar of the Thieves Guild, aka John Dare, will soon face vampire Maven's wrath, Messenger looked at him with ridiculing eyes. She won't even delay him 1 second. Mercer said and walked away looking at a mercenary. Prepare the vitality potions. Wait, what? Mercer, however, hurried back after Messenger. What do you mean by that? She won't delay him? Goodness. You said that John Dare grew up in the streets of Riften, where you used to rule as king. Am I right? Messenger asked. What are you getting at? Mercer narrowed his eyes. Well, it may have been hard for you to notice, but have you come across anything strange about the boy all these years? Messenger asked. Well, Mercer thought for a second. I did know he received some magic education, but aside from that, he was just Delvin's lucky charm. A very talented thief. And you see nothing wrong with that? Messenger asked. The boy had his own fate at play, and no matter what trouble you created for your little gang, he had luck of his own. Mercer knew what Messenger was talking about, but didn't really understand it. Forget about it. Knowing wouldn't do you any good. Messenger spoke and left Mercer staring at his back. According to Messenger, it was John Dare who placed the curse on Maven. While Maven is a good fighter with amazing swordsmanship skills and carries magic protection items on her, John Dare is a magic freak to the max. Still, Mercer thought that vampires would be a good counter to John. But even Messenger wasn't thinking it would work. For some reason, Messenger wanted Maven saved, and it didn't sit right with Mercer. She is currently of no use, and Messenger needs a single item found. Why is he not relying on him rather than the dying Maven? And why is he so scared of John Dare? Isn't he an arch-wizard too? There is something he's hiding for sure, but Mercer was smart enough not to make light of what worries an arch-wizard. So where does this leave them? Maven between life and death, but still funding this small legion of mercenaries. Mercer stole the Thieves Guild money, but his contacts in the city have all been purged. Still, he needs to hit one last score, and Maven's funds are necessary for him, if not for them being all hogged by Messenger. And Messenger is focusing on fixing Maven with vampirism and moving the hideout location. After they failed to capture Carlia and Jelliner in order to use them as leverage against John, this unholy trinity started to feel suffocating for Mercer. He could feel the shadows closely creeping around him, as if Nocturnal was watching him now. He has the skeleton key, the greatest instrument any thief can possess. Maven and Messenger may not know about it, and are just thinking of him as a really good thief, but until when should he keep waiting? Back at the Ragged Flagon, a day passed since yesterday's dilemma and the discovery of the empty vault. Most of those who went out to search for any traces of Mercer returned without any result. However, John sent a message back to the thieves that he found traces of Mercer Fry, and he is investigating. If it is John, it is not strange that his search yielded results when most of them had no luck. Still, he sent a big fish their way, and that was Hemming Blackbriar. This situation required both Delvin Mallory and Brynjolf to stay in the Ragged Flagon during the second day and manage their new clients' affairs. John wants us to start operating above ground. You think we can really do that? Brynjolf asked. The shadows no longer protect us, Bryn. Now you know that the curse is real. Delvin replied. Just focus on the ledgers. I've discovered a few shell companies that are sending money outside Rift In. Those are mostly mavens. Send them to Hemming and make sure that he drains them out of their money. We need Mercer and Maven drawn out from whatever shithole they're hiding in. The two guild big shots were doing paperwork together at a rapid pace and not believing they had to do it this way. When was the last time they did this kind of homework? Moreover, this homework was given to them by their junior John, whom they raised to do this kind of work. It was embarrassing but necessary at the end of the day. And as the two were busy going over ledgers, a couple of men walked into the Ragged Flagon. One of them was immediately recognized by Delvin. This fucking slimy Argonian bastard. Delvin stood off his seat and walked to the entrance of the flagon, and Brynjolf soon followed. Swims at night. Delvin spoke in his eeriest of voices. You've got nerve showing your face here. Think we forgot that cargo you lost? In front of Delvin and Brynjolf were two men, Swims at night, and a friend of his walking behind him. You're not really still mad about that, are you, Mallory? The Argonian, Swims at night, raised his hands up with an awkward smile. Delvin immediately pulled out a short blade and aimed it at Swims. Mad's got nothing to do with it. This is just business, Delvin said, and called the thieves standing around the flagon. It's payday, boys. Swims at night retreated behind his hooded friend and seemed to be wary of his surroundings. I know I said they are friends of mine, but last time things got a little bit. You know how a smuggler's life goes. Swims said. So you're saying? His friend asked. Try to be light with your fists, Glymet. Swims replied. Glymet smiled and pulled back his hood, showing signs of wrinkles and gray hair. Just a little beating then, and Glymet started swinging fists at the unexpecting thieves. The forgotten hero returns. Chapter 669, We're going to jail. Chapter 669, We're going to jail. All right, boys, I think he's learned his lesson. Won't be stealing from us again, Delvin said in a shaking voice. Everyone around him was either exhausted, lying on the ground, or floating in the sewers. Wasn't pretty. Even Delvin was trying to fix his own nose while clinging to what was left of his dignity. Glymet lowered his fists with a smile and helped up Brynjolf, who was stunned badly on the ground. So, Delvin, we're good about that thingy? Asked Swims at night, who went out of his hiding. I ain't talking to you, Scaleface. Delvin replied with disdain before turning to Glymet. But I'll hear that heavy-fisted guy out. Goodness me, I think I'm getting the hang of Riffin's alleys. Glymet said with a light-hearted tone. You're just lucky we played fair. Delvin replied with a sour mood. What are you after? An artifact that was rumored to be around Rift In. Glymet said, I know that Swims at night has some debt to pay, so I am helping a friend out to acquire a treasure and sell it. Well, ain't you the most generous of souls? Delvin said as he sat back on his chair, while Brynjolf sat beside him holding his side. Isn't that the artifact that all the fuss was about a few days ago? Brynjolf asked. So, you know something? Glymet asked. I know a few things, Delvin replied. First, that artifact search was a scam to attract the sort of fool Swims is like and to make them sword for hire at the Blackbriar Company. No, Swims at night denied. I have it on good authority that an artifact exists. Something very valuable. How so? Delvin asked. I've done some research for him. We know it is a ring. Glymet said. What he calls research is probably a secret he knows and is keeping from Delvin, of course. A fighter and a researcher? But to think all of this for a mere ring? Delvin looked at Glymet carefully. Tell you what, you can beat that lizard to oblivion, and I got some nice work for you. I'll pass. Glymet smiled. Whatever, Delvin said. If you're looking for the ring, then do a favor for me. Some other people are looking for that ring too, and if they got it first, I doubt things will end nicely. So you're staying? Glymet asked. Bring the ring to me, and I'll introduce you to a buyer with the deepest pockets in all Skyrim. Delvin said, if you catch the other people who are looking for that ring as well, the buyer will reward you handsomely. You don't happen to be talking about your friend from Winterhold? Swims asked. You shut up. Delvin glared at Swims at night and turned to Glymet. Deal? If things go well, I think I can fence things here indeed, but no promises. Treasure hunting is a gamble. Glymet said. Whatever you say, said Delvin. Then he asked, how do you know that slime lizard, by the way? The Great War, Glymet replied. He used to smuggle things for me and a small band of mercenaries. A veteran? No wonder you hit like a mammoth. Delvin said in a low tone. So, you're just helping him out? I guess so. Glymet nodded. A gut feeling led me to hunt this treasure, to be honest, when I saw Swims a few days ago. A few days ago, in a tavern in Dawnstar, a hooded Argonian walked in reeking the smell of the old rotten ship he just arrived on. His looks were as bad as he smelled, but he wore a refreshed face nonetheless. In his eyes, he saw a familiar face that he didn't see in years. GLYM, old friend. Swims ran to the table at the corner of the tavern. Swims, you are a week late, Glymet said, and put down an old book he was reading to the light of a single candle on his small table. The Argonian dropped his luggage and sat opposite the middle-aged man. How are things? He asked. Nice, Glymet replied. A week ago, you could have run into Tyr and John Rad here. I haven't seen Tyr in a while, and I have a message from General Kasha for him. The Argonian said, but I want to avoid Commander Johnrad. You still can't let go of a grudge. Glymet laughed. He was talking about the fact that Johnrad had arrested Swims at night once before during the Great War. His son is all right, though. Met him once in Rift Inn last time I was there. Swims said, ever met young John Hild? You mean John Dare? Glymet laughed while shaking his head. The Nords almost have a 10th deity who goes by that name now. He's made an impact. You know, he was seen once with the Prince of Strozmkai. I avoided an arrest over there when I said I met him once. Slimy as ever, Swims. Glymet, the years have been kind to you, but not me. Swims said with a chuckle. Still, when I heard you were in Skyrim, I knew you were just the partner I needed for my latest enterprise. You mean another folly? Glymet asked. Don't be so harsh. Swims complained before explaining. I was recently approached by a mysterious man who's been hiring adventurers and treasure hunters from across Tamriel. He wanted me to find a bauble called Berilzer's Mazed Band. You don't say? Glymet narrowed his eyes, as that thing Swims just mentioned is very familiar to him. You know about it? Swims asked. And what it can do? Glymet replied with gleaming eyes. You do realize that this thing is more valuable than anything we've ever gone after before. Then you really know. Swims at night drew closer, the treasure of a dead god. What do you know? Glymet asked. The man thinks he's tracked the ring right here in the rift. I turned his request down. Didn't really trust him. But there must be a fortune that will come from that ring. Swims at night then asked with an expression of pride, what do you say you and I find that ring and steal it right from under the treasure hunters' noses? I say, my friend, you managed to reel me in with things crazier than this before. I say I'm in. Glymet and Swims shook hands together. For the next few days, the news would arrive about the fight between John Dare and the Dragonborn with the dragons at Solitude, then news about the assassination of the Emperor, all of this, and that while Swims at night and Glymet were leaving no stone unturned around the rift. Eventually, Swims managed to hear a rumor about a man living in the woods and had information about a magical ring. The rumor didn't stop there and surely attracted the attention of other treasure hunters who were interested in the ring. Glymet and Swims at night departed from Ivarstead to a place called Thornwell Farm. There, they saw the farm's owner being surrounded by treasure hunters and getting interrogated badly. I'm warning you, old man. Give us the magic ring, or this might get ugly. One of the thugs hit the man on his head and kicked one more piece of furniture. Please, no. You don't understand. I need it, shouted the old man while begging on his knees. You there, stranger? Please help me. It seemed that the man had spotted Glymet and Swims on their approach and shouted for them. The two looked at each other, and in their eyes, they saw an opportunity. The right thing to do was to liberate the man from the group of thugs, and while doing so, they can get a clue from the man about the ring. To Glymet, those amateur thugs stood no chance, and he sent them running. As for the old man, he thanked Swims at night. The gods bless you, said the old man. It's all right, my good man. Swim smiled. My friend here is a very kind man, but I am sure you understand we aren't here for charity. That ring you spoke of. The old man nodded. In truth, I don't even have that magic ring anymore. I lost it in the woods over yonder. If you find it, I beg you, please return it. It's precious to me. The old man looked mad, but as Glymet looked around the ruined house, he could hear the faint breathing coming from beneath the floor. Probably family members. Glymet only had to use a detection spell to discover that the one down there was a young man who was sleeping sickly on a hay pile. I'll see what I can do, Glymet said as he was sure that there was no ring in the house indeed. As the two walked out of the farm, Swims complained. Well, that was a real waste of time, he said. I somehow feel that my chances are good in the woods. Glymet replied. How so? Swims asked. The man owned the ring, and no news about the ring appeared in Riften. So, it is still out there. Glymet replied. So, our area of search just got thinner. Swims nodded. And we even know where to look, Glymet added as the two sat off. After a day of searching, Glymet and Swims at night encountered a vicious werewolf in the woods, and they battled it to death. As the werewolf reverted back to human, as the werewolf was weakened, Swims dispatched him with a dagger to the heart. Werewolves were too dangerous to make an enemy with and then spare their lives. As for what they found on him, it was indeed a magic ring. That's no Barilzer's maze band, Swims at night said, but it does look valuable. No, shouted the old man who seemed to have followed them. This is the beast ring. It is a ring blessed by Herson. It helps my son control his curse. From what it seemed, the young boy in his house is his son, and he is under the curse of lycanthropy. But we could just keep it for our trouble, Swims at night suggested. Glymet thought carefully before throwing the ring back to the old man. Thank you, good sir. May the wolf mother ever watch over you. The old man cried in joy and bolted away. Well, another good deed done. Swims at night sighed and followed Glymet away. And here we are, worn, torn, and looking for leads, Glymet said as he gulped a tankard of ale and ate his chicken. You really like chicken, Delvin commented. I love chicken, Glymet replied. Delvin laughed at Glymet, who appeared to be like a good gentleman, but was a thug at heart. Fine, tell you what. I may have heard a rumor about that ring of yours. Barazer's Zaz band. Barilzer's mazed band. Swims at night corrected him. It's a fucking mouthful. That's what it is. Delvin lashed at Swims. You're going to find that treasure of yours, and you're going to pay us. We've got a strong supporter too, you know. Swims at night started to cower slowly behind Glymet. You should really start paying your debts, Glymet said, flipping the table on Swims. Fine, Swims sighed. Once I get that treasure, I'll make sure your entire guild gets freshly woven new undergarments. Happy. Music to my old hairy ears. Delvin grinned. Now, here's the info you're after. There was a thief boasting about a magic ring. Argonian called Sails Through Storms. But she got arrested some weeks back. That's your info. Glymet wanted to belittle the information for more details, but it was Swims at night that was suddenly taken. Sails, he cried. Sails through storms? She got caught? But she's a living legend. Glymet didn't recognize the name. Sails through storms, one of the few remaining shadow scales, a pirate leader, sailed to the far east, someone who has made their base of operations on the Dragon Isles between Tamriel and Akavir. She has actually been to Akavir and returned alive. Swims at night, the so-called best smuggler on Tamriel, started to act like a die-hard fan over another smuggler. So I gathered. Delvin confirmed it, and the guards know it too. She's not in the usual jail, and no one's saying where she is. We've no notion of how to free her. Oh, I'll find you one. Swims jumped off his seat in excitement over the thought of rescuing Sails Through Storms. He then paused and smiled like a real creep. I have a really, really bad idea. Seeing the look on his face, Glymet finished his ale and sighed. We're going to jail. Exactly. Chapter 670, The Frog Magician. Chapter 670, the frog magician. John and Akira returned to the ambush site, and using their tracking skills, they tracked the ambushers to what they assumed to be the hideout. Turns out the ambushers were just one faction of many, and the location of the gang of evil MS is not anywhere near where they are. John let Akira hunt down all those people who were associated with the Fawn clan in this hide as her target of revenge, while he took care of everything else. During that night, the two of them decided to camp out near a creek, and John sat camp while Akira bathed in the river. He had everything ready in his cube ring, but he didn't really want to spend the night in it, since it takes from him the pleasure of sleeping outdoors. He finished making a lot of meat skewers, which he had been preparing their seasoning since the morning. As he laid them all on a big clean leaf, he put them on the rock that Akira was behind. "Thank you," she said. "You worked hard today," he replied, and started eating his own share of meat skewers while dropping a couple of them in his cube, where Nefertiti and the Sin artifacts were waiting for their share. "It is a pleasure to work and have vengeance at the same time," Akira replied in an emotion John couldn't understand. "How is it?" he asked. "Revenge, I mean. You have been killing those Fawn clan people for quite a while now." Akira started thinking. "How do I explain it to you, John? You have had revenge before, right?" "Not for a loved one," he said. "I wouldn't bear losing my people, but once in the Reach, I had an accident with the Forsworn, and I ended up hating them like no one else. I know that they, as an ethnic group, have faced oppression and injustice, but what they did to me was unforgivable. I was never this angry when I killed them, very discriminately. Everyone knows of the site of the Battle of Forsworn John Dare," she said. "They call it that?" he asked. "They tell of a man bringing the wrath of the gods on every living being over there until he was taken by the devils for the amount of blood he spilled," she said dramatically, then peeked her head from behind the rock. "I know the true story, of course. I was a part of your rescue party back then." "So, you've seen what I left behind?" he asked. "Yes," she nodded. "Yours was a revenge of man who is capable enough despite being weakened. I don't know what you did, but you were a raging menace. I thought of my revenge back then and realized that there are two kinds of revenge, hot-blooded and cold-blooded." "Mine was hot-blooded?" he asked. "As hot as they come, John," she replied. "It takes the pleasure away from vengeance." "What about the cold-blooded?" he asked. "That was the type of vengeance I learned from your mother, Hilda," Akira replied. "During the time when you were lost, Hilda Firemane devastated the clans of Forsworn and her former enemies very systematically. I joined her force for a while, and let's say, I learned a lot. Glad to see you all vengeful and blooded." John laughed. "It is the best feeling," she said. "Revenge is a dish best served cold, and a cold blood vengeance is way better than a bitter bloody rage. You should try it," she said. "All my enemies are 6 feet deep," he replied. "Oh, I forgot," she laughed. "Your reputation makes your enemies bury themselves before you can reach them, so that you don't sacrifice them to the Daedra." "It only happened once, come on," he said. "Still, you're unlucky that you can't bask in the glory of your vengeance and feel its warmth covering your face, body, and soul," she said. "Just don't say that with my meat in your mouth." John laughed naughtily while saying so. Akira paused and looked at him with a blank face after how he slyly used his words before doing something that truly surprised him. She walked out from behind the rock naked, and a smile could be seen in front of her face as she slowly approached him. "You keep teasing me like that, John Dare, and I may actually think about something nice to do with you in our free time." John basked in the glory of the naked Akira and backed his head down a bit to have her entirety in the view of his eyes. "You look gorgeous," he said. Akira's body was something he saw for the first time. It was well-toned and very athletic, as if he was in front of a fitness model. "I was always your childhood crush, wasn't I?" she asked. "I won't deny it, but I wasn't drawn to anyone under 18 back then," he said. "Really? I almost thought you were always curious about me." She said, "Too bad then." She turned away and was about to grab her clothes, but they immediately disappeared. "Nice trick." She smiled now that she got John on the initiative. "I'll teach it to you," John said with an obvious grin while checking out Akira. I still have plenty of clothes on me. The same night John and Accra were having a party in the woods, there was a commotion happening around Rift Inn. You want to catch me? I, the greatest smuggler in Tamriel? You dream too big for mere hole guards, said an Argonian while he ran from the guards in the streets. Halt! You have committed crimes, and when a guard blocked his way. Yeah, go fuck yourself. The Argonian jumped into the canal from the bridge in front of the Bee and Barb Inn before swimming away faster than any non-Argonian can even run. And not too far from him. Watch me, people of Rift Inn, as I turn this child into a frog, said a magician as he cast an actual spell on a child from the crowd in front of his mother. And whoa, screamed the mother. It's magic. It's fucking magic. A member of the audience shouted. Turn the kid back to human, shouted another. Mom, where are you? The voice of the kid came muffled to the ears of the crowd. Son, you can speak to me, even when you are a frog. The mother held the big frog in her hands and cried out, I am sorry, son. Mother will avenge you. Ha ha ha. The magician laughed. You have been fooled, my lady, for your real son isn't a mere frog. It is here, hidden in this box. I only made them switch places. The magician opened the box, and the kid rolled out with hundreds of big frogs. Son, Aok. The mother threw away the frog she was hugging when she realized that her son was in front of her. Don't worry, my lady. Your son may be as fat as a pig, but a frog is still as good as... Lair! The audience became enraged. Trickster, you told us you are an entertainer. A member of the audience shouted. Of course I am. The magician said, I am the best entertainer in all Tamriel. Give us back our money, shouted the audience. How can this be? The magician argued. I've already displayed my trick. There are no refunds, sir. Guards, guards. This man practices magic in public. A man started shouting. The crowd became enraged, and the situation was getting out of hand. The guards nearby started getting closer to investigate what was going on, and people started pointing at the magicians and complaining. All right, you all want your money? The magician asked while holding the bucket that was filled with copper and silver septims. Fine, take it all. The magician flung his arms while holding the bucket, and the coins inside started flying out immediately. Just as the coins spread midair and the entire audience looked up with gleaming eyes, the coins paused before they fell as if they were defying gravity and remained up there. It was then when a strange deformation started to occur to the coins as they started to pop like popcorn inside a hot pot, and the result of that pop started to fall on the ground. Hundreds of small coins all did that, and once they fell, they all turned to coin-sized small frogs. Kaya! Shouted a pretty girl in the audience that had frogs all over her hair. Get them off me! Shouted a man who freaked out and started running away. Each and every member of the audience either started screaming or running away, but in extreme cases, some would faint, some would freeze in place, and some would actually be chill about it. Ha ha! Witness the power of the frog deity that I bought from the Coral Isles. Laughed the magician in ecstasy as he held out a strange stone idol of a dignified-looking frog. Legend has it that once you get bitten by a frog blessed by this deity, you will turn into a frogman. What's a frogman? A member of the audience shouted in a terrified voice. A frogman does whatever a frog can, replied the magician. Guards, save us from him. He has cursed us, shouted another audience member. At that moment, the guards were charging from every corner to hunt the frog magician that plagued Rift Inn. On the other hand, they S good people with the frog curse. The magician, however, didn't seem to be willing to give up. People of Rift Inn, accept the frog as one of your own. This society has been built on a riverside, but you have always despised and looked down on frogs without knowing what they are, without knowing how they feel, or for how long they suffered. People of Rift Inn, I won't stop till you accept the frogs as. Catch him. Surround him. Catch him and surround him and send him to jail. Evil mages, we don't want you in our city. Throw him to the slaughter fish in the lake. Glimmet, the frog magician, realized that his purpose had been achieved, and he gathered the attention of as many guards as he could in the city. This may actually count as his win. Immediately, he started running away from the guards, and during his escape, he ran into Swims at Night, who just jumped out of the canal. Huh, I won the bet. Glymet said. Really? You said this was a magician competition, right? Swims said before looking at the guards that were coming after Glymet. That's all you could attract. It was fun, Glymet said. I don't see any guards coming after you. Swims smirked as he raised his hands in surrender. Just wait for them, he said, and a few seconds later, a horde of guards poured out from all the streets surrounding the two of them. Holy shit, Glymet exclaimed while raising his arms to surrender to his pursuers. By the way, what did you do? Swims asked as the two of them were being caught. A frog magician, and you? Glymet replied. A smuggler magician. I went to the Jarl's court and told her that with my powers, I can make anything disappear. Swims said, for example, her daughter's virginity. Whoa, Glymet was amazed. I was referring to her son, but Swims explained himself. Glymet couldn't hold his laughter. What about you? I turned things to frogs, obviously. Ow, that, my friend, is what you call an unlimited capacity for shenanigans. And some illusion magic. Shenanigans, a practice that was passed down among all of the Elder Scrolls series protagonists. Still, the two of them managed to get a free ticket for the dungeon of Mistvale, Keep of Riften. Chapter 671, All Coming Together. Chapter 671, All Coming Together. A thank you. First off, sorry for being a bit negligent with the releases this month and the past one. I've had some crazy few days working on my new apartment. This Dawn is finally having his own place. A lot of thanks to my readers and this great community that supported me in the past 4 years. This novel serves as 75% of my income, if not more, especially after the last inflation wave. Now, I've managed to do a lot of stuff, and my wedding will be held next September. I'm not sure whether to feel excited or get more busy, but why not both? Anyway, this is a double chapter. Enjoy. Part 1. Thanks to their little folly in Riften, Glymet and Swims at Night found themselves getting dragged by the guards and presented in front of the Jarl, who, despite her tolerant nature, judged them to be put in the deepest and darkest dungeon under her castle. This would be terrible news for anyone, whoever they are, but Glymet and Swims at Night were satisfied with the result of their action. Still, they had to put on a show and act crazy to make sure they were going there. A few minutes later, the two of them were kicked into a prison cell, and the iron doors were barred from outside. It took them a short while for their eyes to adjust and see what was around them, but before that would happen, a voice reached their ears. Well, look at what the guards dragged in. The voice was distinctive as an Argonian feminine voice, exactly what the two of them were hoping to hear. Still, it was coming from the cell opposite theirs. Sails through storms, I reckon, Glymet said. Huh. The voice seemed surprised. And who might you be? Sails, this is me, Swims. Swims at Night replied. Ugh. In the darkness of her cell, Sails through storms rolled her eyes. Guards, send me to the executioner already. No, wait. We came to rescue you. Swims spoke. I figured that out the moment I heard your dumb voice. Sails replied. Go get yourself killed somewhere far from here, you twerp. Come on, don't be like that, big sister. Swims whined. Sister. Glymet widened his eyes in surprise. Hey, don't you dare act cute with me. Sails shouted at Swims. Cute. Glymet widened his eyes in surprise again. But sister, you know that I have always pursued you in order to be at your level of greatness one day. Why don't you accept me? Swims spoke to Sails in a broken voice. Accept. Glymet widened his eyes in surprise. Yet again. You're too young for this. Just go home and do what normal people do. Sails argued back. Young. Glymet winded his eyes in surprise, wider than before. Something wrong with your friend? Sails asked. Not sure. Swims replied. This is too much to take in. Glymet rubbed his sore eyes. So you two are related, an older sister and a younger brother. He is somehow cute, but you as a sister aren't accepting him and you consider him too young? Something like that, yes. Sales replied. He's almost as old as I, Glymet argued, and I am in my 50s. Humans. Sales sighed. Yes, ignore him. Swims at Night agreed, then continued. Anyway, we won't be here long. We've come to free you. Really? Why? Sales asked. We hear you know something about Barilzer's maze band. Swims said. I might. Sales nodded. Get me out of here and we'll talk. Great. Swims was satisfied. Glymet, after you. Here we go. Glymet opened the door to his cell immediately and stepped out of it as if it was open all along. Moreover, he went to Sales' cell and undid the lock with a flick of his fingers. Wait, don't they put magic-suppressing cuffs on everyone? Sales asked in surprise. Those, Glymet asked as he pointed at the cuffs around his wrist. Those are illusions I made. Right away, those cuffs around his wrist disappeared as if they weren't there from the start. Moreover, he flicked once with his fingers and the cuffs around her hand were removed. Glymet was indeed a good warrior, but he seemed to be an expert in illusion and alteration. While not directly as destructive as the other forms of magic, altering matter and creating illusions can lead to disaster sometimes. For now, let's stick close to one another. Glymet said as he gathered the Argonian siblings. I'll cast the invisibility and the muffle spells on us, so we cannot be seen or heard. Still, to see each other, I'll cast Aura Vision on you. The two of you must follow well, and keep your tails from swaying around and toppling down a barrel or something. Well, you make sure you don't fall on your face, mage. Sales replied and received the magic Glymet cast on her without resisting. There was something poetic about being invisible and walking out of a prison. The guard would surely check on the prisoners periodically, but it would take them a couple of hours between each check. Luckily, there's plenty of time till the next check and Glymet can open just about any lock with his magic. The infamous dungeon of Mist Vale Keep was nothing but a stroll in front of the combined power of illusions and alterations. Like that, the group of three didn't stop until they were out of the city, not just the keep. So, our deal, big sister, the ring. As the magic was dispelled by Glymet, Swims faced his sister. He was even making sure she doesn't escape his senses, and it seemed to Glymet that the past between the pair is something he shouldn't miss asking about. Ah, yes, about that. Sails Through Storm said, while laughing awkwardly. I knew it. Swims at Night said, as if he figured out this is what is going to happen. Where do you keep it? I have no idea what ring you are talking about. Sales laughed. It just happens that my pushover younger brother came to me with his pushover friends saying that they can get me out if I promise them something. Her smile was sly and Glymet's eyes were wider than before. Swims, however, was looking at her completely unamused and waiting for this to end. Last chance, sister, he said. Or what? She asked. I don't know. Maybe a certain best smuggler in Tamriel has found a lead about a sea route beyond the Dragon Isles that may lead to... You didn't. Sails Through Storms got provoked immediately. The blind spot of Akavir. A wide grin appeared on the face of Swims at Night. It seemed that there was more to this story, but it was very personal to both Swims and Sails. She wasn't going to let this chance slide, and he was using her curiosity to get what he wanted. A trade between siblings. What do you have then? He asked. A journal. It tells you about your blasted ring. She replied. What a coincidence. A journal is all I have for you as well. He said and showed a book from his pocket. You filthy little lizard. We barter? She asked. We do, sister. He handed over his journal and received hers. Akavir awaits. Naval charts, huh? It'll take me a few months studying them. She said. I've stolen them a few years ago from the Imperial Naval Command Center. They were relics from Uriel's campaign on how to avoid the Akaviri surveillance. Not sure if a 500-year-old chart would be of use to you. Oh, it will, she said with the biggest smile she had this evening. Akavir doesn't change that much, and the Imperial Tsiesi Navy always has the same response time. Besides, I know an authentic chart when I see one. So, Glymet interrupted and asked Sales, "This journal, where did you get it from?" "Morrowind. It belonged to a great adventurer some 200 years ago. He claimed to have hidden the ring in the most dangerous place he could find. Since that man was known to have traveled to Akavir, I tracked down the thing, but I learned later that it is Berilzer's mazed band. Not the most interesting item." Sails Through Storms replied with a nonchalant tone. "Nerevarine reference. And of course, we all know what this ring can do." "Swims at night," said with excitement. "It's sealed inside a dragon cult's tomb called Forelhost. I'll lead the way over there," Sail said and pointed toward the city gate. "I hope you guys brought your horses." Part 2. Forelhost Ancient Catacombs, one of the dragon cult's greatest strongholds, and the site where the dragon cult made its last stand against the forces of the Nordic king Harald in the First Era. Today, it is nothing but a crypt crawling with the deadliest sort of undead in Skyrim. Forelhost was a known danger zone all across Skyrim, and only fools would dare venture around it. Luckily, a special fool who would get triggered by anything that dares him was over there just now. John and Akira climbed the rocky road leading to Forelhost Top, where the main entrance was, and in their wake, many corpses littered the way. Cultists of a new dragon cult, mercenaries of Maven Blackbriar, undead of Forelhost, Legion soldiers, Stormcloak's rebels, and finally, John and his undead. This great massacre occurred before John and Akira were dragged into its flow. The two of them were innocently having some wild fun not too far in the nearby forest when suddenly a few Stormcloak deserters rode through their camp, and one of them tried to strike John with his spear. Enraged, John slapped the man so hard he flew off his horse and alerted a nearby Imperial scout who rushed in with his party and started to fight around John's camp. John and Akira then left the camp and escaped on flame Atronak horses towards where those war parties came from, only to run into a full-scale night raid from the Imperial Legion on a Stormcloak stronghold at the foot of Forelhost Hill. Due to the bad scouting on the Imperial Legion's part, it seemed that the fight had released some dragon cult prisoners who were taken in by the Stormcloaks, and the three forces were fighting against one another. Still, shit was only getting south from this moment onward. This noise outside Forelhost alerted the undead inside and flowed out from the caves on the hillside and started jumping the living at night, fighting the three parties indiscriminately. The more annoying thing was how some of the undead were actually incorporeal ghosts, so they completely overwhelmed the defenses of the living. For a moment there, the Imperials and the Stormcloaks found themselves fighting back to back against the dragon cultists and the undead of Forelhost. But this wasn't the end either. Just then, and when John was about to conjure himself some popcorn, a volley of arrows broke through the night sky, and it decimated all the four parties: the Legion, the Stormcloaks, the cultists, and the undead. The identity of the fifth mysterious party made John instantly put away his popcorn and take out his entire arsenal of weapons and armor. He threw some of his best items at Akira and told her to prepare herself for an all-out assault. At the head of the fifth party, John could see his targets: Arch-Wizard Messenger, the thief Mercer Fry, and the now-walking Maven Blackbriars, along with a group of mercenaries and a shackled vampire walking among them, Serena. John immediately started casting mass conjuration spells. Aside from the usual wrath and envy who would lead his undead conjurations, he was amassing over 100 bone men who were armed with bows and arrows. Akira, not much of the Fawn clan will survive this, but those who do are your fair game, he said. Akira doesn't mind, she replied. Then by the grace of heavens, bombard those bastards. And by this command, John and Akira arrive at the present where they were annihilating what is left of Forelhost undead, the surviving dragon cultists, and Maven's mercenaries, while letting the Imperials and the Stormcloaks escape. At the top of Forelhost Hill, Messenger, Mercer, Maven, and their last patch of mercenaries were gathered as they watched their force get eaten away by the flood of dark undead. Undead of the Soul Cairn. This is no ordinary summon, Messenger commented, and felt the great presence he wanted to avoid coming by. I didn't sign up for this, Messenger. Meanwhile, Mercer Fry seemed to be very dissatisfied with Messenger as he was looking at Serana, the one they dragged with them all the way here. Really? Messenger asked. Then this as far as we go together, Mercer. Not so fast, Mercer said. You said this will be greater than any treasure a thief can get their hands on. You no longer need me now? There is always someone who can disable traps the usual way. I just wanted the best, but I can pretty much handle myself there. Messenger replied. But Mercer seemed to agonize over something, but he then turned to Maven. And you? Will you remain silent about his actions for this long? Mercer's words were directed to Maven, who, while able to walk on her own, still looked like a 100-year-old corpse. She didn't seem to be able to reply either, but kept glaring in some direction with obvious hate. Mercer gave up on Messenger and Maven at this point. It is too dangerous, and for some reason, he couldn't bypass the security imposed on Foralhost's entrance, just for the sole reason that the door was actually not closed. The key to entering Foralhost was the vampire they captured, and it seemed Messenger was going about with this plan that Mercer rejected like hell. Only the dead may walk these halls. Take up the chalice, heed Alduin's call. To enter Foralhost, one had to be among the ranks of the dead. Foralhost itself offered a chalice of unknown poison in order to get in, but to Messenger, he can just use the vampirism curse to gain entry. This is what Mercer was rejecting. Then it is time for me to leave. Those of you who wish to follow. Mercer spoke to the remaining mercenaries, but it seemed that they would rather go with Messenger than him. Walking down the hill at this time is mere suicide now that the enemy they were hiding from has found them. Moreover, there are only 4 mercenaries, nothing more. Fine, I had an easy way out anyway, your loss. Mercer walked back and disappeared behind an ancient stone pillar. His presence completely faded off Messenger's perception. How curious. Messenger wondered about Mercer's mysterious abilities, but he lost interest gradually and turned to Serana. So we are ready, Ms. Vampire? He asked Serena, whose shackles were unlocked by a blonde female mercenary. Yes, we are, she said. After this, I am free to go. Yes, you are, he replied. I rarely go back on my words. Great. Serena smiled and brandished her claws. Who's first? I'll go first. The female mercenary said, Mind the face, vampire. It's only a scratch, dear. Serena replied, and with a swift move, she made a wound on the mercenary's arm. The other mercenaries followed along, and they all got scratched on their arms. These scratches were enough to transfer sanguinaire vampires to them. This will easily count them among the dying, and well let them in the crypt of Foralhost. But it was then when a loud, shrill cry echoed in the air, a ghost flew through the night sky while devouring the other ghosts of Foralhost. Once Messenger saw that, he was triggered immediately and offered his arm for Serana to scratch it with her claw. Meanwhile, the silent Maven Blackbriar reacted for the first time. She started baring her teeth and fangs that elongated more than what normal teeth should, and her limbs elongated with her back getting arched like a farmer. She may have looked like a zombie version of her former self a while ago, but currently, she was even scarier than a Hagraven. Immediately, Maven darted ahead with her claws brandished and sought out the one that she has a very deep grudge against, the one responsible for her current deformity, Potima of Envy. Potima of Envy redirected her shrill against Maven the Vampiress, but as her sonic attack hit Maven, it seemed ineffective and Maven didn't slow down one bit. She even reached Potima of Envy and attacked her in close range. The attack swooshed through Envy's body but didn't make contact. Envy immediately reached out her hand inside Maven's body and tried to do something, but it was also ineffective. The two monstrous-looking ladies looked at one another with strange looks in their eyes and realized that they are useless against one another. On one hand, Envy has no physical form aside from the skull that can turn ethereal for safekeeping, and on the other, Envy's soul attacks weren't effective on Maven, whose astral form was already damaged and deformed. But that means only physical attacks can come in contact with Maven, and by that, punch, thud. A punch landed on Maven's face by a large warrior-like creature made of bones, Odokuro of Wrath. Maven flew up the air for a few feet as the uppercut she received was more powerful than whatever anyone can take, and as she landed, all her limbs and bones were broken and twisted. Still, that didn't stop her body from twisting back into form and planting her feet to the ground before arching her back while her limbs were fixing themselves for her to finally stand on her 2 feet. Her twisted neck even fixed itself, and now she looked back at Potima of Envy and Odokuro of Wrath, who were standing around the newest person to arrive on the hill of Forelhost. John Dare. Messenger retrieved his arm back from Serana's clutch as he looked at John Dare. He was smiling widely to return John's obvious grin. "Goddamn, Maven," John said while laughing. "You look peachy, girl." GRRR. As a reply, Maven seemed to be growling back to John rather than using actual words. "Huh," John frowned. "What kind of vampirism is this?" "Damn if I know," Messenger replied nonchalantly. Still, her astral form was broken, and once she started turning into a vampire, she deformed like this. Oh, so vampirism affected her damaged astral form this way. Good to know. John sighed. And it seems I have caught you in a bad time, too. You're using vampirism to gain access to Forelhost? One can easily cure it later, Messenger said, but you are not here because you are concerned for my health, Archwizard John Dare. Indeed. I am here for your head, Archwizard Messenger. John replied. To be honest, I research you a lot in my free time. You are a unique individual, and I have come to respect you. The two of us don't need to oppose each other. We can profit from one another greatly. How so? John asked. Skyrim is your realm as I see it. There is no one who can compete with you here. You are almost the king of this land, but you don't want to bother yourself with the political drama, and you have your own undisputed power. I'm not going to fight you in your home and expect to win. Messenger said. So you are a reasonable man, after all. John replied. I am. That's why I will respectfully ask you to let me leave Skyrim without any conflict between the two of us. Once I am out, I will even send you my honest thanks, a compensation, and will try to work with you for our mutual benefit. Messenger added. So a deal? John asked. A covenant between our most exalted and gentle persons. An enigma of moratorium and peacemaking that can become an epitome of civil reciprocity. Messenger said, This bastard of an author can't help himself, can he? John sighed and shook his head. So, Dragonborn John Dare, what do you say? Messenger asked as he made an offering of peace. You see, Messenger, you've gone after my girl. If you research me, you know the things I do for my people. John said, I know. Mademoiselle Jelliner was indeed pursued by our people, but back then, I couldn't have known it was that rat Mercer's idea. When I found out later on, I was taken and depressed. Messenger said, and the time before during the Siege of Solitude, I was simply hired by Maven so it can be accounted as an old cold business. You sure can talk. John smiled, but his bloodlust spiked through the roof. I wasn't just talking just about Jelliner. His eyes then landed on Serana. You're still holding one of my girls. Hey, John. Serana then waved her hand to John behind Messenger. Hey, Serena. John replied. The look on Messenger's face went instantly to pale as he couldn't help but feel like he was being toyed in this conversation all along. I see. Messenger sighed. This is most unfortunate indeed. And just like that, Messenger hit the ground with his prosthetic arm, causing a large wave of radiance to cover his escape towards the entrance of Forelhost along with his 4 remaining mercenary goons and Maven the Vampiress. John instantly moved ahead and shouted the marked for death, Thursdam on himself, to enter Forelhost after Messenger. Only Serana remained standing alone at this scene. Guess I'll just go home. Serana sighed and dusted off her clothes and hair. After a few minutes, Serana left the hilltop of Forelhost and met Akira along the way before they started to get acquainted with one another, as it is their second meeting since their first meeting during the ambush yesterday. But that is not the story we will focus on now. Not long after the place became as silent as the dead littering its roads, the forgotten hero, Glymet, The best smuggler in Tamriel swims at night, and the sailor who seeks Akavir sails through storms, have all arrived at the entrance of Forelhost catacombs. In case you guys are doubting it, yes, I am hinting at an Akavir adventure, but that will be a sequel to Dragonborn Saga. Chapter 672, Down the Deadly Tomb. Chapter 672, Down the Deadly Tomb. It wasn't just any day of the week, it was payday. In front of Forelhost, Glymet swims at night, and sails through storms were eyeing the entrance to the ancient tomb. "You think the battle down the hill dragged things all the way up here?" asked Swims. "Definitely," replied Glymet. "The camp of the Nord rebels was surely obliterated by the Imperials, and many corpses litter the land. Still, we found no living around. Is it normal for battlefields to be abandoned with corpses everywhere?" asked Sales. "No." Glymet shook his head. "The winning army loots the losing army. There are also independent looters who try to scavenge the fallen soldiers before the winning side, but none of that was here. My money is that the undead we found scared off the winners and left this place for fellow looters," said Swims in a bright mood. However, the other two looked at him with eyes filled with disappointment. "What?" he asked while looking between them. "If the undead of Forelhost were this mighty, you think we can survive?" asked Sales. "While I can deal with the walking dead, the unknowable poses trouble for us," Glymet said. "Swims, you're the one who has been hunting this treasure. I'll leave the decision to you. Of course we go ahead until we no longer can." Swims replied naturally. "I'll turn back and leave if this proves to be too dangerous." Sales, however, showed a different nature from her younger brother. "Huh, sister, this is exactly why I'm the best smuggler in Tamriel. I will not shy back from such a minor inconvenience," Swim said proudly while banging his chest. "Both you and I know that the reason you are the best smuggler in Tamriel is that I don't operate around Tamriel anymore." Sales replied to Swim's taunt with words that made him unable to make a comeback. "What is the story with you two, anyway?" Glymet asked. "You both are old enough to be experienced in your field, but the brother is hunting treasures while the sister is sailing to a different continent. It doesn't fit your smuggler reputation." Glymet's remark made the two look at him with bothered faces. "Treasure hunting is just part of the job. It doesn't have to be avoiding Imperial patrols and sneaking through old caves all the time, you know?" Swim said and then added, "Also, a smuggler must be a great pioneer at finding secret and dangerous routes to be better at what he does." He then turned to his sister. "As for her, she's obsessed with Akavir for some reason." "Not just for some reason," Sales replied with strong emotions. "Traveling to Akavir means a lot to our family's heritage. Here she goes again." Swim sighed and moved ahead before Glymet and Sales, as if he was bothered by what she was going to say. "Unlike my brother, I am not wasting my talents for mere smuggling," she said. "But you're still a smuggler," Glymet argued. "That is just a meaning to an end, not an end goal to me." She then pointed to the east. Beyond the Patamaic Ocean lies Akavir, a magical land filled with warriors and unimaginable beauty, a place rarely a native to Tamriel ever reached. Unlike us, the Akaviri people are fully capable of coming to Tamriel and invading our land, as they did many times in history. We, the people of Argonia, pride ourselves to be the original people of Tamriel, the first folk who walked this land even before the ancient elves, and we share our very essence with the root of Tamriel. "But," Glymet asked, "but we can't protect our home if we can't travel out of it." She said, "The furthest place we can reach to the east is the Dragon Isles in the middle of the ocean between Akavir and Tamriel. It is also the land where the Akaviri people don't cross unless they are meant to invade Tamriel. The difference between us and them is that if they want to, they can, but even if we want to, we can't sail to Akavir easily." "Let me stop you for just a moment, but didn't we invade a part of Akavir some 500 years ago?" Glymet interrupted her with a question. only because the entire Imperial Legion was dispatched. She said, "Don't get me wrong. Sailing to Akavir is not because we are short on good ships or naval charts. It is the Akaviri folk who defend their waters like mad people, and they can always intercept you from miles away in the sea. We can't raid them the same way they raid us." "They are that good?" Glymet asked. "They are the best," Sales replied. "Their scouting ability in the high seas is unrivaled, and to make it worse, their weather manipulation magic is the bane of all naval enemies. We can't counter them with any of our current means." The only way she managed to get the closest to Akavir is by sailing through a storm. Swims interrupted their chat. "I mean, that's how she got her name. Sails through storms." Glymet made a long hum, but still had a burning question. "But still, what is your personal reason to get to Akavir?" he asked. "To smuggle, trade, steal, blunder. Imagine if you're the only one who can get items from Akavir directly without going through the Dragon Isles," she said and made a wide sneer. "I'd be richer than John Dare himself." "And what is wrong with the Dragon Isles?" Glymet said. "I heard they are quite close to Akavir." "Okay, from now onward, all the Akavir lore I'm bringing isn't all canon. I have compiled many texts from the Elder Scrolls series and collected stuff around Akavir, with hidden pieces of lore and item descriptions from ESO, but many of them will be explained by my personal understanding. Other than that, the non-canon parts one made are as close as I can get to the canon hints and the unlicensed texts. Some of it is also a popular apocrypha written by the TS lore community, so let's call it quasi-canon from now on. Politically, yes. Still, their cultures are eternal enemies," replied Sales. "The people of the Dragon Isles are the last known descendants of the Akaviri humans of old. So those people are human, not snake people?" Glymet asked. "Right. The Samai, they call themselves, means sworn people of the Isles. They are humans pretty much like you. Maybe as tall as Bretons, but with a different overall appearance, like less facial hair, flatter faces, smaller noses, wider cheekbones, and their skin is almost like the Bosmere." "Huh. Interesting," Glymet said. "Almost everyone is obsessed with the Akaviri races, but I've never thought that there's a race like that." "Don't let them hear you say this," Swim said. "If you don't call them Akavir, you're in for a load of trouble." "If I come across one, I'll be careful," Glymet said nonchalantly. The group arrived at the top of Forelhost Hill and witnessed the reminder of destruction left by the small encounter from earlier. Unaware of what or who had been here before them, they scouted the area well in order to find that out, but all that was left for them was the entrance to the crypt. "So, some survivors ended up entering the tomb before us," Swims at Night said with a concerned face. "Or someone strong enough to lay waste to the fight down the hill." Sails Through Storms replied with a different idea. Meanwhile, Glymet started checking the entrance. "Sadly, I have more bad news." "What is?" Sails and Swims asked. "Only the dead can enter Forelhost." Glymet pointed out at the inscription written around the entrance. "One must drink poison from that chalice over there and walk ahead." "Well, that's unfortunate." Sails seemed to be disliking the idea. "Whoever entered before us have definitely killed themselves. Drinking poison from this chalice, you don't think?" "Hey!" But it was Swims that interrupted her. "If that door only opens for the dying, I can brew us a special poison I know. Won't kill us, but it won't be pleasant." "I'll go with that plan then." Glymet seemed to be on board with Swims. "You two are mad?" But it was Sails that started lashing out. "Why in oblivion would you risk your guts for some ring?" "Huh. Don't you know what that ring is capable of, sister?" Swims asked. "Oh, please." "Just because that ring worked 200 years ago doesn't mean it will work now. Moreover, it can't be in there from the beginning, and we're just walking in a pit of certain doom," she said with a persistent tone. "So you're out?" Swims asked. "Yes, I am out. My game is out there in the ocean. I'd rather die on the sea or on Akavir." Sails turned around and gathered her traveling pack. "Suit yourself." Swims turned away and didn't bother. "More treasure for me anyway." Glymet saw the exchange and approached Sails as Swims started working on his poison. "You sure about this?" He asked. I don't risk life and limb for something I'm not fully interested in, especially something that is the brainchild of one of my idiot siblings. She said with a confident face. I'm not talking about this. Glymet smiled at her reply. Sales stopped what she was doing and looked at her brother's back as she understood what Glymet meant. It doesn't matter, she said. It is only me and him in this world, and I know he has his own desires. I won't stop him from living his life, even if it meant for him to walk into certain death. That's a weird kind of love. Glymet smiled. You don't have anyone? Sales asked. The only person I care about is in Winterhold, safe and happy. Glymet replied, then a smile slowly appeared on his face. So, after we survive this, do I get a post on your boat? Ah, Sales smiled and passed a coin to Glymet. I always appreciate a brave soul. My ship's docked in Solitude. It will be a few months before I head out, but be sure to be there before the eve of the coming morning star. And that? Glymet asked while holding up the coin. A ticket, she said. A ticket to Akavir. Deep in Forelhost. Not sure how much time passed. Glymet and Swims at night hid behind a pillar from a volley of deadly arrows that swooshed towards them. Fucking Oblivion. Can't you do anything? Swims shouted at Glymet. Your magicka dispersing poison is just draining my life away. Wait until I gather another spell. Glymet replied and worked hard at gathering his magicka before firing a strong sun spell. Sadly, that took him almost a minute since his magicka wasn't regenerating at all. But after his spell landed on the undead creatures that were bothering them, it gave them enough space to run from behind the pillars with their blunt weapons to bash the heads of those undead. It was a tough fight that might have ended easily if not for the poison Swims made. He stated before drinking that it would only cause a little headache, but what he didn't know is that headache is one of the symptoms of running out of magicka. He wasn't a spellcaster, so that was that. You okay now? Swims asked. It's bearable. I can feel the effect stopping. Glymet replied. I only need to drink magicka potion to recover. Do that. Swims passed the potion to Glymet. We'll take an hour to kick in, but let's keep moving. Glymet said after drinking. The two of them were carefully moving ahead in the Forelhost catacombs until they arrived at an iron gate. The two men managed to figure out the mechanism, and as they moved ahead, they found themselves in a very ancient chamber, one that seemed locked from the other parts of the crypt. In the center of that chamber, there was a certain sarcophagus, and a lot of power was resonating from within. That was noticed by Glymet. However, Swim's reptilian eyes noticed a red gleam on top of that sarcophagus. The ring, he shouted and stepped ahead. Careful, but in a split of a second, Glymet jumped and dropped Swims down along with himself. He felt the power surge from the sarcophagus, and, just as he predicted, a deep roar came from within it as its lid came flying towards Swims. After saving his friend by a hair's width, the two looked up with pale faces before seeing the thing that came out to greet them. Don't tell me. Swims was on the verge of tears. A dragon priest. Move. Glymet kicked Swims away as a blast spell landed in their spot, and the two rolled away. It was then that Glymet started to retaliate at the dragon priest with spells of his own. The magic attacks flew across the chamber's left and right, up and down, until the noise started to attract the undead that were originally locked out. By that, Glymet was facing the dragon priest, while Swims at night was fending off the undead. Their tag team efforts were enough to block the undead from killing them, but not enough to prevail in their current state. Glymet was restricted from casting big spells, and it started to become exhausting until he came up with an idea. Swims, line them up for me. Glymet shouted. All of them? Swims asked. All of them, along with the dragon priest. Glymet replied. Fuck. Swims whipped one undead skeleton with his tail and shattered it before starting to run between Glymet and the dragon priest while pulling a tail of undead pursuers behind him. During that, Glymet took cover in the undead as the dragon priest started to hit his own allies and lessen the burden on the two of them. Glymet then stopped firing spells and put his right hand inside his robe. Click! And he brandished a blade, an Akaviri katana blade, one with a golden blade that was wreathed in flames. He raised the blade up, and something akin to a dragon's fire breath happened. That was Glymit's trusty companion since the end of the Great War, the Sword Goldbrand. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.